and welcome to the Four Corner. Okay, we're off to a great start this week. Okay, welcome to the Four Corners podcast. Yeah, so when you do this live and not in audio form, you can't get those flubs out. Okay, so this is Four Corners podcast. I'm Brad, and I'm joined by Matt and Shad. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Good.
I'm good. My kids are... School starts back tomorrow, so... You know... All the feelings with it.
So we have we're gonna do our typical format tonight. We're gonna do our two smaller questions, and then we're gonna go into our Kevin Sullivan retrospective. I just wanted to put that out there, front and center. He passed away last week. If you hadn't been paying attention, he had to GoFundMe about a month before, and I remember reading it, which they didn't quite say the condition, but it sounded pretty dire at the time. I think it had something to do with blood clots. So,
Yeah. What? I'd heard that. I'd heard like a lot of people that he was sick, but I didn't really know. Like I don't have like an active observer subscription, so I don't know if like Dave Meltzer talked about it or what have you. But I heard he was sick, but I just didn't know like what exactly was going on.
What the bits I had gleaned is that he had some sort of surgery and then he was having blood clots and complications is what I had managed to kind of piece together.
I knew that he had a procedure. The blood clots, from the way they were talking, to me seemed like the logical conclusion, but it's still conjecture because they haven't. The family hasn't said anything, and they shouldn't have to.
Nope.
But
this is what we ran into with stupid. Was it Bruce Mitchell and Brody Lee?
Yes.
I mean, it's unfortunate because his wife, Brody Lee's wife, eventually had to come out and explain in certain ways like what was going on with him, and at least like set the record that no, he didn't die of COVID. You know, it was she said the medical condition, which even I, who like actually looked through medical records a lot, I wasn't necessarily familiar. I don't know. It almost seemed to me, if I recall, like when she said the condition, it was one of those. It was one of those conditions where it's like doctors will use a specific terminology, maybe like even a Latin term, whatever, and it means something, but it's not necessarily a specific condition. It's like something for like a general like lung condition or something.
My understanding was that it was an unidentified lung infection.
Yeah, if you're listening and you don't know what happened, so he passed away, and everyone kind of kept it hush hush, which good on everyone for that. And then Bruce Mitchell, who was working for Wade Keller at the time, he got fired for this, by the way. Went on this whole like rampage, saying he had COVID because he was obviously suffering from brain rot at the time, and then they had to come out with the case of why he died because Bruce Mitchell was being an asshole, pretty much.
Yeah.
And he had no, and he did all this like with no like information whatsoever, and it was pretty clear. Like what I thought was dumb at the time when they had talked about it and everything, it didn't sound like COVID. Like that was what always pissed me off about it. Like there was no indication, even by the little bits we knew at the time, it didn't sound like COVID.
I mean, they outright said it wasn't.
Yeah.
The symptoms doesn't, and I don't want to like relitigate the whole COVID issue just as a society, but if you actually like really paid attention to COVID and people who actually died of COVID deaths, and you actually study the data after the fact, he was not the sort that would have died of COVID.
No, it would have been
healthy people, but usually the people who died of COVID are people, unfortunately, who are overweight, had heart issues, which that goes with being
diabetes. The one consistent I saw was if you had diabetes, it wrecked you. That was the one consistent I saw between like anyone I knew that had it, is if you had diabetes, you were in for a world of pain.
But I can say, like I've said before, like my mother unfortunately was diabetic, and she eventually died of, roundabout way of saying it, complications of diabetes. Because diabetes is it's a very insidious disease because it will just eat out your circulatory system.
And if you don't treat it properly, because I had a family member this happened to, you'll literally go insane if you don't treat it in your later years. Your
blood sugar levels, you can get bad condition. You can get essentially especially if you don't treat it, you can get a condition that's called ketoacidosis, which like the blood sugars and chemistry in your little league blood will just go off, and you can get incredibly sick. But there no indication that Brody was diabetic.
Yeah.
He's a big dude, but he wasn't like. I'm sure if you looked at his actual like physical state, he was probably in great cardio shape.
He was really fit.
Yeah, because and not to
all I doubt.
And not
I doubt
to
his MI was like obese.
And not to shame or anything, but like Keith Lee had a real bad bout of it that still affects him. But if you look at Keith Lee, he's got a couple of comorbidities going on there, which makes him more vulnerable. And yeah, there was just no indication of it. There was no like symptoms or anything. But that was also that era where literally if you knew anyone that died, they had to say it wasn't COVID if it wasn't COVID. Like it was kind of dumb. But yeah, so from what I've gleaned is it seems like he had been sick for a while. He had a surgery. There are complications from that, and that's pretty much all I know. He was 74, I believe, and I don't think we'll ever know, and I don't care to know. All I know is that he is probably, when you talk about Mount Rushmore of wrestling minds, he's at the top. And super genius trademark Eric Bischoff probably gets way too much credit when Kevin Sullivan was laying a lot of that groundwork for him.
Yeah, I think Eric gets a lot of credit for stuff that he probably shouldn't get credit for. If I could step real back there, I guess, and this is not super detailed journalistic reporting. I literally went to Wikipedia, but they had a link to an article, and it seems that to the extent we know what happened, I guess on May 12th, while at a Florida autograph signing, Kevin Sullivan suffered, quote, a devastating accident, which I don't know what that is. It says that he underwent emergency surgery that saved his leg and life, but he faced severe complications, including sepsis and encephalitis.
Okay, that's I remember the accident at the card show from the GoFundMe page.
Did it explain what the accident was?
No.
So my takeaway is that this is the fault of those dickheads who hover around in airports in order to hound people for autographs. It's all their fault.
I'm thinking he fell. If I had to take just a wild uneducated guess, like I would think he fell.
Because it's kind of vague language. If it says like he suffered a devastating accident at a signing, to me, I'm actually thinking like, well, maybe he had like a stroke.
Yeah, like, why would they work on his leg though? That's kind of where
That's where it gets off. Like, because you could say accident, you could actually be technically true because something like a stroke or like a brain aneurysm, really more like a brain aneurysm or something of that nature. It's known like medically it can be a cerebral vascular accident, like CVA. But I don't know what that is because it's like, oh, he saved his leg. So yeah, maybe he did somehow suffer an injury to his leg, and it's like it saved his leg, but that almost saved his leg. That almost seems like there was some sort of situation where like why would your leg need to be saved unless it's like a really bad break or there's some sort of like circulatory.
Yeah, and it's weird because you'd think if it was like a car accident or something they'd say. So it was always vague in the GoFundMe. I always thought it was weird, but I mean, it's their right to it's their right to not say either, because why do we need to like. Why do we need to know? I know we're like speculating, but at the end of the day, like, we don't need to know.
If he had sepsis, like that's real bad.
Yeah.
Encephalitis is inflammation of the brain. Like those are two things you don't want to get.
Because if you don't remember from like world class, like septic shock syndrome is what pretty much ended Mike Von Erich.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, like sepsis is actually it kills a lot of people. Like my wife, it's ironically, my wife and I were actually talking recently about a younger sibling of someone we know who's like basically our age. Like this is an individual that my wife, this is the sibling of a woman my wife went to college, not college, even high school with. So they're our same age. She had a younger sister, so the woman was probably like late 30s maybe, and she had essentially like an infection and didn't get it treated like it should have, and then grew progressively worse. And by the time she actually saw treatment for it, she became septic, which sepsis is effectively, it's like an infection that gets into your bloodstream. And obviously, do the math. You don't have to like be especially knowledgeable about medicine to know that where does your blood go? Everywhere.
Yeah.
So if you have an infection in your blood, that infection, where's it going? Everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're now, not only is your, like, let's say the infection started in whatever, like your kidneys. Now that's getting spread all throughout your body. Now it's infections in your lungs, it's your heart, it's so it becomes so much that your body just becomes more than your body can actually fight off the infection, even unless they catch it early and they give you really high dose antibiotics. Like this is so many years ago, but when I was like early 2000s, my father was still alive. Like he actually had an infection. He became septic, and they had to give him. He was in the hospital for like 2 weeks, high dose antibiotics, and it cleared up. It's easy. That's something you don't want, especially like the older you get. And 74-year-old man.
That's what I was gonna say.
Naturally, that would be harder to fight off.
That's what I was gonna say too. Is when you're 74, like everything is more complicated. Everything is tougher. Like, there are things like people our age in our 40s would not even think twice about that. In your 70s and 80s get to be pretty serious. But so we're gonna hit our two subjects tonight. So we have a bit of a contentious one to start with. So this is gonna be what championships would you call from AEW and WWE? I think every company has too many titles right now, but we're gonna stick with the big two. Let's start with AEW because I think AEW is a bit of a easier fix.
So I have this. It's going to sound. There's two things I would do straight away, and the first one is that the trios titles, Ring of Honor, AEW, they're just unified. Those bounce back and forth. Doesn't matter.
That takes one set out. Done that, haven't they?
They did, and then they were separated back out.
Oh, I thought they had the same champ. Oh.
Dustin, they did. The Bang Bang Gang was holding it, and then they were stripped of the titles because the rule was you couldn't freebird somebody else in. So Dustin and the Von Erichs have the Ring of Honor Trios titles, and Christian Cage is the Trios champion. I would just say that it's just Trios titles between the two.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would do is first thing I would do is I would establish a hierarchy. What belt? Obviously you got the world title, but we need to know like where the TNT and the international are in relation to each other. And I would make the Continental title. Basically, I would make it like a King of the Ring thing, but you get a belt you get to carry around instead of a crown.
I think I would do. I would kind of do. I think with the Continental, I'd be fine with. You can defend it all year, but when the classic comes around, you relinquish it at the start of the tournament, and then
that's what it's going to do now.
Yeah, and I think
that was an announcement after the tournament.
I think that's fine, and that's a specialty. I think though. So, I think in the current state, the international is more prestigious than the TNT title. As much as they probably look at the TNT as a secondary, I really feel like Orange Cassidy made that championship feel important, and the TNT title, I think, has really suffered from, I'll generously say, inconsistent booking over the years to generally what I would personally feel as mostly bad booking versus, like, a few bouts of good booking. But I would say the TNT title has mostly been booked poorly since Cody left.
I would agree. I think the intention was for it to be effectively the equivalent of either the Intercontinental title, going old school WWF, WWE, or like the US title if you're looking at like NWA, WCW. I think it was they had some weird language at the very beginning where it's like, especially like when Cody was holding it, where they're almost being like, this isn't a secondary title. It's like almost trying to make like it's kind of like not a secondary world title where it's like this title is just as important. And I felt that's just like a little bit of puffery to kind of make it seem more important than it is. But it's like, look, let's be real. It's like this is a secondary title. But I agree. Like I think the booking has been bad. I actually thought that for TNT, the booking kind of righted it. itself when you had like the Christian reign, because I think he actually did a good job.
Yeah.
I think the international title is more prestigious than TNT, mostly because of booking, but also it feels more important. And I think that's twofold. One, it's because like Orange Cassidy really did build it up a lot, and then secondly, it's like who were the people who have like predominantly been had the title since then. It's like, well, John Moxley, who's been world champ multiple times.
Orange, Will, and MJF.
Yeah, and it was on Will Ospreay, who's obviously like your hot new babyface. Clearly,
if Roderick had it to transition it to Ospreay.
Yeah, but Ospreay clearly at some point will be world champion. Like we know that's gonna happen. It's now an MGF, a guy who just came out of like a multi-month I think the longest reigning AEW world title reign.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was.
That's been built up. That's been built up more. I expect probably at all in London, like I expect Ospreay will probably win it back.
Yeah,
because that's the big feel good moment where he wins the title back
in his home country. Yeah,
his home country.
Yeah.
But I think those world title, obviously, those two titles are fine. Continental, it's like I'm so torn on that. It's I think the Continental actually as a belt concept, I would imagine was done twofold. One, to give it almost like I don't want to say consolation prize, but it's like a reward to someone like Eddie Kingston, because he obviously was the first one to hold it. So it's almost like we want to recognize you as being like this amazing worker and kind of a cornerstone of AEW for the last 2-3 years. So they kind of rewarded him with that, but then who won it? Not that he absolutely knew, but maybe they knew. Maybe Tony Khan was pretty sure that he was going to get Okada, and he could have had that because Okada does have a good relationship with the Bucks. Like, and I'm sure they negotiated, and maybe Okada talked to the WWE, but I think Okada was always probably leaning towards like AEW because of the connections and what have you. But
well, and I think at the end of the day, he knew they were gonna book him strong for like 3 months and then lose interest, and then he was just gonna be on that like never-ending treadmill.
Maybe, but I also think that they put the title on Okada for a couple reasons there too. One, to like establish him as like someone important, and also to just give him kind of something to do and to keep him.
I feel like
until they actually do more with him, because I've said before a lot of times on the show that AEW is oftentimes predictable with their booking, and that in the past that's been good. Sometimes it has been bad though, and it to me, I feel people complaining like Okada's just a comedy gimmick now. It's like, yes and no. He is doing a lot of a comedy, but it's like have you not watched a lot of wrestling in your time? Because it's clear what they are having him on a treadmill, because they're obviously doing stuff with Swerve, Hangman Page, that storyline's coming to a head, or it's going to at some point soon. You have MJF, who's come back from injury. He's still got to be important. You have Will Ospreay you're going to do something with, but it's clear like they're going to have Okada in that world title picture too. But they don't know where to put him yet, or they don't have the plan to put him yet. So what are you going to do with him? They put the title on him.
I feel like their booking philosophy this year has been more about getting back to basics, getting like a good foundational structure to go forward with. And I think part of their philosophy this year has been, we are going to put our belts on our biggest stars.
Yeah, I think that's true. And to that, I see the criticism of having the title on Okada, but it doesn't bother me that much. I just feel in general, I kind of like the Continental as effectively like in a weird way, their version of like King of the Ring. Like I don't know that you need like a belt. Maybe you do, but you could be like, I'm Continental Champion. You just carry that around all year.
Yeah.
But they also kind of have the Owen Cup, so it's like, and not that they like the guys parade around with it, but the Owen Cup winners like get a belt too, and it's like, I don't like that. Yeah. Like I literally like Owen Cup, literally hold up like a trophy. Like, I mean, Owen obviously it was part of a comedy type of thing, but Owen walked around with his slammies Like like you don't want to make the Owen Cup hokey. They're trying to not make him hokey, but I mean you could have like a guy like with a trophy, and that's perfectly fine. I mean they do that in places like New Japan. I don't know that like the Continental, like I kind of don't necessarily. I understand what they're doing with it and why they put it on Okada and everything that I just explained, but I don't like that it's like, oh, now I'm going to defend the title. It's like just have it be King of the Ring, and it's like you that's like a badge you. But I think they run into a problem because again they have the Owen Cup too.
So, well, they have different purposes. The Continental being, hey, I made it through this tournament that was under these stricter rules. You know, this proves me as this kind of person, whereas the Owen is winner gets title shot.
So I think I have an easy solution for their title problem. And it's an easier solution than WWE. So what I would do, and I think it would fix their problem very largely, and I think they've started doing this, but just keep the ROH titles off of AEW TV. No ROH title defenses. People can wear their belts. You can mention it, but those titles do not get defended on TV. You can say, hey, if you want to watch them defend this belt, it's in Ring of Honor. Because I think that's where it really felt like it got out of control, is when they were doing like pure title defenses and like the rosters were very like intermingled and like the world titles getting defended. Like I think that's where I started losing it, but they've been better. Like I don't feel like when I watch now that I get much ROH stuff. And I think if you did that, you could maybe get away with like axing a singles title and you'd be okay. But even then, if you just got rid of that, like, and the chiefest complaint I see from people that say they have too many titles is the ROH titles make it too much.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess to the extent I haven't finished talking about titles, I would axe like the pure title. And I'm with you guys that just either get rid of the Ring of Honor trios or just merge them with the existing trios. And I would also, they just created it, but I would get rid of the secondary women's title in Ring of Honor.
The TV.
Like Ring of Honor. Yeah, I mean, they just started it so that wouldn't happen, but I don't know that it's necessary. But
I
agree. Like I think defending the Ring of Honor stuff on AEW TV, which I understand because it's like Tony Khan's essentially like using AEW programming as like a commercial to sign up for Honor Club. But I guess we don't know what the TV deal is going to be. If the TV rights package deal that they've worked out, which I'm sure they have, includes like you actually get like a Ring of Honor programming on a WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery network. Or I guess even on like Max itself, if it's just like on streaming.
Because they really need to get Honor Club off its own thing. But I think though, ROH really feels like this year, especially, it's started to settle into like a developmental territory, and it feels like ROH feels like it's much more its own thing this year. Where, hey, you want to see like those people that used to get a lot of time on Dark and Elevation, or hey, we see something in this person like Billy Starks. They're in a Ring of Honor, getting TV time, getting character work. Like I feel like it's their version of NXT now, which it feels like ROH this year works a lot better than it did last year.
I agree and disagree, and I disagree only in the sense that I've seen some criticism because I don't have Honor Club. Because there's only so many. I'm always behind on like AEW in general, so it's like I can't add like another thing. But the criticism I've seen, which I have looked at like the results, and I think it's fairly accurate, is that I agree with you that it is used as a developmental brand because it's like people like Billy Starks get TV time. Queen Aminata gets like TV time, like Red Velvet, who obviously has been on AEW before, but she really has kind of actually developed. She was always like pretty decent. She's developed even better doing Ring of Honor, and the Ring of Honor has like some other guys who are getting they are using a developmental way, like Lee Johnson, who was kind of like a almost like a jobber, kind of in AEW in years past. Maybe he'd be featured in like AEW Dark or whatever, but he's been working in Ring of Honor and has actually developed really well. But the criticism I am seeing, and I think it's fair, is that guys like Mark Briscoe hasn't been on Ring of Honor TV, and it's like, that's your world champion. Like, you need him on the TV and like maybe regularly defending the title on TV. And the fact that he's mostly just an AEW worker, like, it's a little like, I think that's a fair criticism.
Yeah, that is. I think there's fair criticism of the product. I mean, like, in a structural, operational sense, I think it works much better than it did last year, where it just felt like you were getting AEW light last year, and this year it feels like, oh, hey, this is kind of like a cool worldwide show that has its own identity.
I do like the having its own identity part, because it's more of it's a different feel, and they can take more risks or build people up that way.
And it works better for them, and I think that was kind of dumb last year that they were doing. But now it's like, oh, if you want to see Athena, you have to get Honor Club and what for her. Like, you have to do that for Billy Starks. You have to do that for these people. So I think it works better. But I think separating those titles out is how I would fix the problem for them. And I think they would probably still have a title too many, but I feel like it would feel better.
Yeah,
and they're kind of already starting to do that.
So let's get into the real quagmire here.
Can I finish one thought on Ring of Honor?
Yeah.
Like, I think there is also some disingenuous discussion and discourse on social media. Like, what a surprise! People being disingenuous, but people like, oh, they're shitting on Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor. It's like, whoa, what is he doing with it? Like, it's terrible. It's like, if he didn't buy it, you know who would have bought it, and what would it be done with Ring of Honor right now? It would just be footage in a vault that never gets uploaded to, Peacock.
Yeah,
that'd be it. That'd be the end of it.
Yeah,
or you could have it actually be as a brand, as like a secondary brand to
for people to get a
AEW,
paycheck,
and as a developmental. Yeah, and people getting a paycheck. Them putting on at least like 4 amazing pay-per-views, like the one they just had was incredibly well reviewed, and obviously it's a much smaller show, but it was I think it was like the same. Wasn't the same weekend as one of the WWE shows. I don't think it wasn't SummerSlam, but it was like the one.
Was it the NXT Summer?
No, wasn't it like? Was it Money in the Bank? It was like,
it might have been Money in the Bank.
It was one of the ones. It was one they did like in overseas, everything in like France.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were saying like, this. Yeah, I think it was one that had like 5 matches, and people were like, this is kind of shit. Like, the Ring of Honor was great. Like, WWE was kind of shit compared to this pay-per-view that had.
I mean, WWE's
quarter the star power.
WWE's like PLEs. I hate to say that word. I'm just going to call them pay-per-views. That's what they are. Their pay-per-views have been honestly like mid to bad this year, other than Mania. And like, even the TVs, like I think SmackDown this week had not even 40 minutes of wrestling on it.
Mm-hmm.
And even the pay-per-views are starting to get like pretty sparse on wrestling, because they have this fan base that just wants their half-naked man soap opera now.
I think I saw someone who did the math for it, and I don't know, SummerSlam was what, 4 hours? Something like that. And I think an entire hour worth of it was just ads and video packages. And
well, that's TK. I'm not gonna throw anyone in WWE under the bus. That is TKO.
But I'm saying
fingerprints on it.
Presented as a whole, that's really bad. That's not, how many of us have an ad blocker or just skip the ads as soon as possible on YouTube? Then, and then you're watching this thing that you have paid additional for. You have paid money, presumably, to watch this pay-per-view. And they're like, by the way, here's a bunch of ads on it. And you're like, oh.
Well, the problem is you have people from the UFC kind of bringing these ideas over. And that stuff works in the UFC, because if you've never been to like a live MMA event, they have to like reset stuff for people to come out. So like between like a fight in the UFC, you're going to have 10 to 15 minutes of dead time. Like no matter what you do, because they have to get all the crap cleaned out of the ring. They got to get like the people reset. So it makes sense for like a UFC show to like have that stuff. But like in wrestling, you don't got to do that. Like you can go right to the next match. So I think that's unfortunately people from UFC interjecting like formatting ideas, which in wrestling like just
it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unnecessary. You're already watching the pay-per-view. Why do I need a 5-minute video package in the lead up to this match I'm going to watch? I would submit I don't. You know, if give me a 90-second package. Hit those high points. Just a few clips, a few sound bites. Let's go. Because I'm already here. You don't have to sell me on the match. I'm literally already here.
Well, and your announcers can do some of that work too. That's where I think that goes wrong. But no, their PLEs have been pretty, I would say, terrible this year for the most part. Like, because I mean, for me, honestly, like, and it's gonna sound disingenuous, but it's true. Like, if you're doing like a pay-per-view tier show and it's just mid, it's bad. Like, it's.
I mean, everyone's going to have missteps sometimes.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're gonna whiff sometimes too. But like when you're whiffing almost every time,
I don't. I'm not going to get into it because my personal preferences are going to color it too much. It's just there's a reason that I watch what I watch because I prefer it, and AEW video packages don't take that long. It's fast enough that you can sprint to the bathroom, take a leak, and maybe refill your cup.
Yeah. But there
you
was
just
like
gotta pick that match that you're not as bought into for.
There was like up till 2018, I feel like if you watched like a WWE pay-per-view, like you would usually get good, like a couple good matches, like it could typically be good enough to like overcome the bad on it. And I feel like the quality of the in-ring has really gone down in WWE.
From the cobwebbed hallways of my memory, I think I remember us discussing the match was good, finish sucked a lot.
Yeah.
And now I'm not hearing as... Obviously, I'm not watching it myself, but here's what I do for our watchers. I subject myself to the highly variable danger room that is r/squared circle. I'm not getting as much as like match was great, finish sucked. I'm getting a lot of like
I can't with squared circle. They're such disingenuous douchebags. Like when they were talking about the Bobby Lashley and MVP stuff, they're like twisting themselves in mental circles to not bring up the racial angle of it. And this is Reddit that loves to play the race card for everything. And it's just like, you guys are being disingenuous. Like there is a conversation to be had about what Bobby Lashley and MVP have kind of intimated about Triple H as a booker and like what we're seeing before our eyes. But you guys don't want to because you're a bunch of like astroturfers and just bitch boy like
it's not quite as apparent as it is on Twitter, where you just see the copy paste response that has the exact same phrasing.
Yeah, so WWE, I think there's a couple of easy cuts to make right away in WWE. So right off the bat, I think you can get rid of the US title, you can get rid of the Beta Cuck title, you can get rid of
the Seth Rollins title, which was then won by Damian Priest, I think.
I think Gunther has it now.
Gunther.
I call it the Ferrero Rocher title because it looks like Ferrero Rocher within WWE right on the front.
I popped.
You made it sound cooler than it actually is.
I popped.
It's a big chocolate belt, man. That's what it is.
I popped hard because I think on the flagship they eventually called it the Beta Cuck title, and I was like, yes, I should have trademarked that for it. So I get rid of the Beta Cuck title, the US title. I would get rid of one of the women's singles titles. Pick one, either or.
let me start. I'll just start with NXT. NXT title, women's title, tag titles.
Yep.
Get rid of everything else. We don't need women's tag titles in NXT.
If you can't, I think the problem with both women's titles is, and I'll leave the main roster women's tag titles away. If you do not have more than like 2 consistent teams that have like a name and a gimmick, like you don't need a tag title division or tag titles.
Are the main roster tag titles unified, or are those separated back out again?
I think they're unified right now. I pray to God they're unified.
Yeah, that would be one thing I would say is just have one set of tag belts, please.
And they've never been a good company for tag team wrestling, other than like some very brief like segments of time, and they've never been able to justify 2 tag titles.
The men's tag titles?
Yeah.
They're not unified anymore.
They're not?
No, it was really awful because let me actually look who holds them.
Can they stop like unifying and splitting?
Because we're even past like NWO levels, because I think we've gone on longer than even like the NWO.
The Bloodline has them right now. It's Tama Tonga and I think Jacob Fatu. Yeah.
But he's injured, right? So
who is?
I guess Jacob Fatu.
He got hurt already?
Allegedly, but
one of them did.
He like, I guess at SummerSlam he took a dive and like was grabbing his leg, but then afterwards they're like, oh, he was always planning to sell the leg, like he's not really hurt. And it's like, I don't know.
If my litmus test on something like that is if he goes to the outside and starts selling, but gets back into the match, now I'm going to start looking at it real sideways. If you get hurt and you don't ever get back into the ring, I'm far more likely to believe it's true. Now, there are going to be exceptions like the Jason Jordan angle and stuff like that, but my idea is that if you get back up and get back in there, I am more likely to believe it'll work.
Or if you're getting like a lot of camera like time.
Oh, if the camera's on you a lot, yeah. That makes sense.
So the Bloodline has one set of the tag titles. The other is I guess they're still the Judgment Day, but Finn Balor, JD, Pagano.
Why the fuck do they have 2 tag titles again?
They broke them up. You don't realize, like, they right after like WrestleMania, sometime in the last few months, like they had Awesome Truth reunite and win the tag titles. And it's like, my brothers, it's 2024. You want to put the tag titles on The Miz and R-Truth. And I love R-Truth. R-Truth is hilarious. 50-something-year-old guy, like still entertaining, great shape. But he's a comedy worker. Like
And The Miz is, I mean, like, this is going to sound way more mean than I mean it, but post his ACL tear, The Miz is worthless. Absolutely worthless in the ring.
There's washed, and then there's like beyond washed. He's been hung up to dry. It's well done.
There's washed, and he fell off the drying rack into the dirt.
Oh yeah, there's a meme of that's been passed around on social media not long, and I've seen it pop up like frequently in the last like few weeks. But it's this like this steak someone's cooked, and it's obviously like it looks like shoe leather. Pretty much that's how long it's been cooked. Because someone was like, "Rate my steak," and someone captioned like, "That's not even well done. That's congratulations." Like it's like that's The Miz. It's like no, you're not well done. You're congratulations. Like that's finished.
I liked, I gave Miz more credit than I think you guys did back, but
I hate him.
Yeah,
I've never liked him.
I know.
I can't be objective.
You flames on the side. The only way I can piss Brad off more than talking well about The Miz is to say it's boss time, and look at him. He's stone facing me right now.
Because I can't with Michael Cole.
What you know? What apparently, without having Vince in his ear, he's been able to relax and be a lot better.
I've watched some of their stuff, and the way the announcers bicker in WWE, like I hate them. I hate them all. Like they're just like that, because anytime I watch it, like for any complaints I have about the AEW announcers, I always come away from WWE programming if I watch it saying, you know why I like the AEW announcers? Because they at least pretend to like each other.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is even with me giving the Miz a lot more credit, or being the most Miz friendly person in this trio, that injury took a lot out of him.
And I mean, and I'm going to be fair to him. He wasn't a great wrestler to begin with. I would even say saying he was mediocre was being kind to him. So any kind of injury that's going to hamper his mobility is going to cause even more like problems. And he's just getting older. Those injuries are hard to bounce back from. But I tell the story with The Miz is I hadn't watched in a number of years. Like after the Benoit murders, I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to check out Raw. And I probably hadn't watched in like 3 years. Turn it on. I see The Miz on my TV. I turn it right off. And that was it for another 2 years.
The thing that I look at with the reason I give Miz credit is that the guy was able to be a regular, steady hand without much in the way of, without much drop off for a very long time. And was it the best, most flashy thing in the world? No, but it was never supposed to be.
Oh, and I also don't like him because Daniel Bryan finally came back and he got stuck with The Miz for like the first 5 months.
All right, I'm gonna make a joke here. Just take it as a joke. How much of this is that you don't like The Miz, and how much of it is you're mad The Miz landed Maurice?
No, I why I don't like The Miz is because I hated him on Tough Enough, and he's never redeemed himself in my eyes.
He wasn't on. He was on Real World.
No, he was on Tough Enough.
No,
he's on the Daniel Perdue
you're thinking of WWE
one.
Tough Enough. You're thinking of
the Daniel
You're confusing like MTV.
One. Yeah,
he was on Tough Enough.
He was the one they wanted to win.
And you are correct. He was his claim to fame initially was on MTV's
Real World.
Real World.
Was it Real World or Road Rules?
I think it was Real World. And I say that because my wife hated his guts being on Real World.
I didn't see the Real World he was on. He was just an obnoxious asshole on that Tough Enough contest, and I've never liked him, and he's never redeemed himself in my eyes. And they've given much more talented workers like to be his underlings, like, and wasted John Morrison with him twice.
I mean, those two, they were able to make a good heel gimmick out of it, and I'll give him credit for that.
So Shad, looking it up, he was on Real World. I can't talk. Real World first, but then he was on a spin-off show, Real World Road Rules Challenge.
Oh yeah.
From 2002 to 2005. I didn't realize they had. I'll be honest with you, my wife watched Real World a lot. Like I watched probably the first, maybe
I think
four seasons, and I just bailed.
I think there's I think there's people that make a career of being on those shows. Like you go on one of those and you get into the challenge, and then you just keep doing it forever. I think Survivor's developed that, where people keep coming back.
They've
done all-star seasons where it's the champions of all of them go on.
Yeah.
Is Survivor still a thing?
Yeah, it's still on. It's gonna be a thing forever. So what I think what I would do here is we get rid of the stupid fake world title. Tag titles got to go. I don't know why what I don't understand with them is, going back to this, is they fix it every now and then. They finally get it right where they have things unified up, the brand split makes sense, and then they go back and they screw it all up again. And even the fan base is always why did you do this again. But so like I would get rid of the fake world title, get rid of the extra tag title. Like you don't even really respect the brand split that much to begin with. So why can't the world champion just go back and forth? It doesn't make sense to me. I'd get rid of the U.S. title because no one gives a crap. It's just a duplicate of the Intercontinental title anyway.
Where's the Intercontinental title? Like who? It's almost like who cares about that, or who has cared about that for like 25 years.
I would get rid of one of the women's titles. I would keep the women's tag titles. Then I would go with what Matt said about NXT. Just go back to what it was: NXT tag title, NXT title.
I looked it up. They have the NXT title. They have the NXT North American title.
Yeah.
They have the NXT tag titles, but they also have the NXT women's title. Okay. NXT women's tag titles, not necessary. They now have the NXT women's North American title. It's
I forgot about that.
But they also have, which it's like I kind of only vaguely remember this is a thing, but they have the NXT Heritage Cup Championship, which is like held by Real's kid, and it's like I don't even know what this is.
Did the Heritage Cup like kind of come over from UK or something?
Kind of like because obviously like UK was such a disaster, and they try to incorporate some of that stuff, and it didn't work. Guys, one title they have to keep around is the WWE Speed title.
I forgot that.
What are we gonna what else are we gonna do with Andrade and the incoming Lucha Brothers, but to have them in 3-minute matches on Twitter?
Someone said,
or X, whatever you want to call it.
Let's use the proper media name, Matt. It's X, formerly known as Twitter. That is the entire name because that's all anybody uses.
I saw I think it was on Squared Circle. If it wasn't, I apologize to those idiots. But they're talking about one of the speed matches and talking about how good it was. And I looked it up, and it was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you cannot have a good match in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. It is literally impossible. That is squash territory.
They're not good. It's just a match on.
Brad,
it's just high spot, pin.
Yeah. But Brad, you know this more than Chad would, but Stardom has had the high speed title for how long? And they don't. It's not like it's only 3-minute matches, guys. It's just the concept. It's like it's
like the X Division title.
Yeah, and it's like you try to be more energetic, and like really fast paced. And you've had people like Azumi, or Starlight Kid, or whomever actually have like amazing matches. We've reviewed one of them.
Yeah,
we reviewed Starlight Kid versus Azumi, and it was a great match. Was that a 3-minute match? No. And it was a fascinating match. Like probably, again, we don't really like rate stuff, but probably like I wouldn't be remiss to say it was like a 4-star match at least.
It was good.
Good match.
And I don't always think longer is better for matches because some people rate things really highly because they're like, well, it was 45 minutes, so it had to be good. It's like, well, no, that's not always true. And usually if you go over 35 minutes, you really have to be careful or it starts becoming like a law of diminishing returns. But generally speaking, if it's under like 6 minutes, it's not going to be a great match. Like really good.
It can have a purpose, but it's not going to be a technically great match.
Yeah, it can be entertaining, but like under 3, you're not getting anything out of it. So I think that's a wrap for that topic. So this is kind of a precursor to what we're getting into for the brunt of the topic. So this is, and we had talked about this on a previous episode. I think it was for the Bash at the Beach 97 review. We talked about this. So this is pretty much Miss Texas Jacqueline Jackie Moore versus China as far as being like a bodyguard. And I think our consensus was when we watched Bash at the Beach 97, and I think I came away from it and we kind of agreed on it, was she's a much better valet / bodyguard than China is. She has, in my opinion, we can discuss it further, but she has better presence. I think she has better charisma, and she can actually work, which makes a huge difference. Because she can actually sell, she can do more than just stand around and look tough and throw crappy forearms.
It was actually disappointing because at the time when all that stuff that all those folks China had been around, I would have expected for her to have learned more. And she just never really seemed to step into it. Like, she never really seemed to like really go with it. And
I think
it just seemed like such wasted potential, you know?
I think she was just a stiff. I don't think she had the athletic ability to do it, because we've talked about what a stiff is before. Because we've made the distinction of like what a stiff is versus not a stiff on the show multiple times. And if you watch China try to wrestle, she's a stiff.
It's just really unfortunate because all of that stuff was right there, and again, given who she was around and all that sort of stuff, people to learn from, and just never.
Do you remember the Simpsons clip where Mr. Burns remembers when he's a wee young tyke and he cripples an Irishman with a bumper car, and he's like laughing about it all day, and he's in bed, he's like, oh, what was I laughing about? Oh yes, that crippled Irishman, and he keeps laughing. Like, that's me sometimes when I remember Chris Jericho breaking her hand with a hammer. Get her reaction. I just laugh at. I just laugh and laugh and laugh.
What a weird angle. Like, that was so strange.
How did they get the remember they were both the Intercontinental Champion for like a brief period. How did they get the belt off of them? Do you remember? I was just thinking about that the other day, and I couldn't remember how.
I remember they were.
I just remember it ended. I got nothing outside of that.
Right, that reminds me of when they had Kane unmasked.
Oh, and he set JR on fire? Yes!
He said, and that was meant to, they tried to make this, like, big dramatic moment, and I remember watching that live, and I remember, literally, I just burst out laughing. Because this was, like, the funniest, most absurd thing. This is, like, this should be, like, a goddamn Monty Python sketch. This is how, like, just absurd this is.
I just remember,
the Spanish Inquisition busts in the room.
Just
our weapons are surprise and fire, and Kane's like, "I've got it." And never mind.
Just
that would have been amazing.
The gif of the aftermath, like, it's up there with Heidenreich sexually assaulting Michael Cole.
Oh yeah.
The awful gif of that is just, oh man. But yeah,
I know. I remember the Heidenreich thing when I was on TV, and everybody was just, when that happened on TV, and everybody was, because that was back in the TSM forum days, and everybody was just like, "Oh wow!" That's and then there was some apology. No, that's not what's happening. It's like, dude, this is being run by Vince McMahon. He's like, "Oh, it's gonna look like what he's doing to you." Patterson, get in here. Look at this.
They had that weird era where they were trying to do like the Vince Russoisms, and it was just really bad.
Ruthless aggression.
Oh, that's
like,
But let's not forget the real tragedy that happened though, is when Norman Smiley murdered Pepe.
Oh, poor Pepe.
So I would say,
and I loved how Norman Smiley for that segment was riding Pepe and like shouting encouragement, and then he's like, "In you go!" and he tossed him in the wood chip. He sold that so hard. Between that and the screaming Norman Smiley gimmick, the guy has my utter forever respect. I know he was big in Mexico, but I didn't see that. I saw this.
I love the other one. It's hard to find. No one's ever like really put it on YouTube. You have to like go find the episode. And I don't know why it's not a bigger meme than it was, but when he fell in the demon casket and he came out as screaming demon Smiley.
I loved that. So that was the best use of the Kiss demon that I can remember. Is he's tagging with him, but he comes up out of the thing screeching, and I'm like, oh Oh my God, they managed to make it work.
And I thought it was a brilliant gimmick. Like, I know WCW sucked at the time, but I love the fact that he hated hardcore matches because it hurt, and he didn't want the title, but like things kept happening and he kept winning.
Mm-hmm.
It was the thing that got me about that was it was a takeoff of kind of the Mikey Whipwreck run where he had the TV title, I think it was.
I think they went into the world with that with Mikey.
But it was a progression because they took it to the more absurd. And I love absurdity stuff. And so I'll take it, man. I'll take it 100%.
So I take it you guys are in agreement on the Jacqueline is a better...
Jacqueline was more dynamic. Jacqueline was...
She could talk.
It was a better visual. And it's like, well, not a better visual. It was more interesting visual to me, I should say.
No, I would say it's a better visual because she had... Like, Chyna would mean mug, but it was kind of like, whatever. And Jacqueline did have, like, a presence to her. She knew how to mean mug properly. And, like...
Chyna, I felt was all, like, the visual. Like, that she was physically imposing. And even when she, like, got surgery, we had a tap dance around this, but obviously with surgery to make her look more feminine.
Yeah.
Which she was a woman. I'm not saying otherwise, but I'm just saying like she had a very strong jaw, and I think she like got surgery on the jaw. But
yeah,
well, that's I guess that's a whole separate discussion where it's like the darker side of wrestling, where it is kind of like a meat industry. Like visuals matter a lot. But I agree with you, Jackie. Jackie was I would choose Jackie. Jackie is interesting because if you actually look at her build height, 5'3", like 120 pounds. Like she's, and relatively speaking, a small woman. Or not even that small. Like 5'3" for a woman is not abnormal. But she's not big, but she was muscular, and she had an intensity. She had a presence to her, just the fact that she would immediately get, if you knew nothing about her, nothing, but you saw her and it's like, oh, she's a really athletic woman, and then all of a sudden she starts throwing hands, and all of a sudden she's like suplexing a dude on the outside. You obviously be like, oh my God. Like you would immediately, 30 seconds, she could win you over, and you would obviously be like, all right, maybe I want you on my side. Like I'm gonna get behind you.
And I think
because I don't want you attacking me. I'm gonna get behind you. I'm on your side.
Understated of her having like the basic competence, like the basic techniques of she can body slam someone properly and make it look good. Like I think that's like an understated thing that people don't get with like a manager. And I think where she was better than Chyna is she could bump, so she could show some ass in the big matches.
I think the way that I want to quantify it is Jacqueline did more stuff better for longer than Chyna did. Because a lot of Chyna's like big notable, I guess, career time. Because she spent, I'd have to go back and check, but it feels like she spent more time as a valet / manager than she did being active in the ring. And what would happen through most of that is she'd stand there and she'd cross her arms and she'd mean mug, and then she'd do a low blow.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline did more Jacqueline had a credible feud against everybody's favorite internet lolcow, Disco Inferno. And
did you since you mentioned you invoked his name, did you see have you seen like the latest controversy?
Him shooting his mouth off again about Ibushi not being good?
Well, yeah. Ibushi, but also like that he was Takeshita.
Okay.
Because Takeshita has been like killing it in like the G1.
He's hating on Takeshita?
Yeah, well, Alex, let me explain. Takeshita has been doing amazing in the G1 to the point where there are people the discourse online about is that when he comes back to AEW, they're like, you have to do Tony Khan, like you need to come to your senses. They need to push this guy to the moon. Like he needs to be like main event level, like as soon as he comes back. Like he's the real deal. But Glenn Gilberti, stupid Disco. He started off as like, if any of the Japanese guys come across you as being good as Dave Meltzer has been preaching for years, any of them, and someone replied like, well, Takeshita, and Disco goes like, is he? He's a thigh slapper and does the goofy let me hit you in the face forearm spot and looks terrible. Disco Inferno is talking about the actual in-ring ability of Takeshita, but that has actually, for whatever reason, like Meltzer for like a day or two has been like roasting him. Just you're not. Look, I have issues with Dave about a lot of things because I think it's sad how he like is obtuse about some things, especially when he should know better. But certain things, like you're not going to school Dave Meltzer. You're not going to school Dave Meltzer on ratings, and you're also not going to school Dave on things like historical knowledge. And Dave Meltzer has been roasting him to the point where literally like a tweet he did like yesterday was like, "This is the dumbest take that you've ever, pretty much the dumbest take you've ever had, Disco." Because literally he's like Mr. Wrestling 2 in the 60s when he would do like a knee lift, would like slap a guy in the back to make a sound, is like to make it more. It's like this has been done by people like Terry Funk, Ric Flair, etc. for like years. So being like, he's just a thigh slapper. Well, like to dismiss someone like Takeshita.
And I don't want to hear it. Like I'm sick of it from vets. Okay, I don't want to hear it. You guys worked in standard definition so people couldn't see you doing that shit. Plus, we've watched a lot of old stuff. You mat stomping motherfuckers have no place to complain about thigh slapping.
Everybody, you can go back and watch Disco when he would throw a punch. He is popping his feet up off the mat so that they land about the time his fist gets there. And how is that different than thigh slapping? It's a different sound. That's
Chad.
It.
Yeah. You're in business. Did you ever like, I'm gonna throw a punch and then at the same time like stomp my foot? Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah. Everyone does. Everyone. To be like, he's just a thigh slapper.
No. Well,
like,
okay.
Wait,
hang on. Full disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
I was a thigh slapper because I would throw a roundhouse kick. But here's the thing. If you want to complain,
like, I'm just like Takeshita. There's no difference. Me and him.
I'm people like, the thing is, when I would do it when I would throw roundhouse kicks, and so martial arts background, I would bring my hand up like this when I would start the wind up for it, and then as I threw the kick, I'm bringing this hand down, so it's all part of the motion. If you want to complain about people doing thigh slaps, the problem is whenever it's so blatantly obvious that they do it. They throw a super kick and then on the way their leg is there, they go, like if you want to complain that, okay, valid criticism, because it's like, come on, man, if you're going to do that, you got to find a good way to at least try to cover it or something. But just to say it's like, he's a thigh slapper, it's like, dude, yeah, you're a foot stomper, okay? You got no room to talk. None of us have any room to talk.
Like,
okay?
Literally, when the mayor beat Fuzzy Lumpkins in Powerpuff Girls in the wrestling match, he was stomping the mat when he was punching him. Like, that's how much it's known that it was a joke on Powerpuff Girls in the 90s.
Look, and it's either you do something to sweeten the impact of a move, punch, kick, whatever, or you just hit the guy. And you know what the problem with just hitting the guy is? It doesn't sound as good. And the only thing that sounds as good are chops. And people don't generally like getting chopped.
And the other thing is why it's all dumb. And why people need to shut up about it either way. We can all watch the UFC and see how people really fight. Because I've talked about it repeatedly, like when they get into this stuff and people like, well, they're killing the business. Like when you really want to get into it, I know Shad goes into the mechanics of it, but we're not going to go into that conversation. But when you want to get down to wrestling at its core, even something like an Irish whip is kind of fucking stupid. So let's just not have the conversation about killing the business when like a basic part of it is kind of like a little silly, or even like the classic airplane spin is the one that they always do in parodies and stuff. Like, so let's just stop, because it's always been silly.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I just went and found a GIF that's, I think, Dusty Rhodes and Jerry Lawler, and Dusty's a foot stomper. Okay,
well, he is in the match, one of the matches we watched, but I mean, he was dressing it up with his,
but it doesn't matter. It does. It's just Disco can't come up with a legitimate criticism, so he takes a buzzword and throws it out there. It's like, look, no, just okay. It's clear. Disco is a clown. And where's the Cody Rhodes tweet? Just throw the Cody Rhodes tweet. That's it. That's all we need. We move on with life.
And the other thing is, though, is like seeing someone slap their thigh a couple times is not going to affect my enjoyment of a match. Like, it's just one of those things you kind of overlook. Like, there are worse crimes in a match than thigh slapping or mat stomping. Like, it's such a stupid, it's a stupid critique. And I also hate it, though, because I said repeatedly, is those old guys like, oh, they slapped their thigh. It's like, yeah, you guys probably did too, except you're on standard definition versus high def, so people didn't see you doing it because they couldn't see every little.
Or those old guys that were on TV in the 80s who didn't tighten their punches up and you could see daylight between the impact.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
But
don't.
Yeah. So
screw Disco.
Let's go into our main topic. So
Disco sucks. Yeah. Disco is dead.
I need to put
Detroit Rock City up in here.
One day we're gonna do a wrestling lolcows episode.
He'd be pretty high up there.
Yeah.
It'd be like him, a couple of journalists on the internet would be on there. Who else would be a good lolcow?
Bill Batty.
Cora Jade's kind of in lolcow territory.
What are you gonna say, Matt?
Well, Bill Batty's just, he's not even a lolcow. He's just like an awful human being.
Who's Bill Batty? Is he a?
He's the wannabe tough guy that is SRS's bitch, effectively.
Oh, is he that guy that was like talking all that mad smack and
Oh yeah. He's done like really offensive stuff, which I won't repeat, but it's like literally like offensive personal stuff about like Sean Ross's like grandmother or something like that. And it's like, this is like, you have a stupid like Twitter beef with a guy, and you want to like go into like that. It's like that. Is like not the same level. It's like it's awful. Like, he's a bad human being.
What is it about wrestling? I mean, I know journalists as an average are pretty garbage people in general, but what is it about like wrestling in general that like just attracts like such like scum trying to like clout chase with it? Like, there's something
it's everywhere. It's easier to parse out, I feel like, in wrestling, because there is a very clear line between people who have cred and people who don't. And there are people who want cred, but they can't have it. Look, I'm not going to claim I'm any great shakes. I wasn't. And I didn't put the work in to grow beyond where I was. But I can talk about what was going on in the ring. Yeah, I can talk about what it was like in the ring. I can talk about that sort of stuff. But I'm not going to sit here and claim that, okay, there are some times when I'll get upset that I'll see something on a high level and be like, it frustrates me because I was better than that. But I'm self-aware enough to know where my limitations are. And for as much of a joke Disco is, yeah, he was in a national promotion on national TV and a title holder. Bill Batty is a guy who was a shithead on a British reality show, and then he continues to be a shithead on X, formerly known as Twitter, and get banned repeatedly. And also back down like a bitch much when he gets called out in person.
Oh,
so
another lol cow is what's her name? Izzy's parents would be lol cows, especially her dad, because remember he totally nuked his Twitter presence when Lindsay Dorado told him, like, I think offered him a ticket to come and apologize to him in person after his show.
No, it was at a jiu-jitsu tournament.
He was going to light him up. Lindsay Dorado is like the real deal. Like, he ain't playing.
Well, I wouldn't have. I would not have accepted an apology from that jizzbag either, because it was who was it? It was one of the, I don't remember their gimmick name now. Remember one of the guys' dads had died in one of the tag teams in NXT, and they were like hassling him about it.
He was like mocking it. It's like, this isn't even. First off, you're not part of the show.
Yeah.
And it's like, what heat do you think you're getting? Like taking someone's personal life tragedy and like mocking them for it. Like what? It's the dumbest thing possible. But I feel bad for Izzy, because she has actually trained, I guess, to be a wrestler, and has actually done stuff for Mission Pro Wrestling, Thunder Rosa's promotion, which I actually just saw that she's
they're shuttering it for a while, I think.
They're shuttering it for a while, which I'm not sure why. Maybe it's.
Well, they had her. The problem is, though, they had her training with Chase.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Jason Rance.
Yeah,
Grayson.
They were involved with him at first, and I think Alex Porteau took over her training eventually, and like everything. But so obviously Kevin Sullivan passed away. I think there's kind of runs of his. Well, I think most people are going to know him from the Dungeon of Doom, which is like the very tail end of his career. But I think where he really made his bones is the Army of Darkness in Florida, which is, I think, the heavy focus of this. And he kind of rode that gimmick for a lot of his career, and it really was kind of, I would say, kind of groundbreaking for its time.
It was new in an era where it was a new standout. It seems like in an era where a lot of people were trying new stuff and it not working.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I kind of feel like watching this stuff, I was like, I really haven't seen someone like do this.
There was a kind of doing this in the but it was his thing, like where they summoned Purple Haze out of the surf at the beach. Mm-hmm. They kind of did in Ohio Valley, where it was summoning the Leviathan out of the river kind of thing. It's like, and you know what? Yeah, it was Batista, but you know what? As far as that goes, that's not a bad way to do it. Like, that's a pretty good thing to lift.
Well, and they brought. I'm pretty sure I looked it up and I couldn't tell, but I'm 99% certain that was King Curtis Iakea announcing Purple Haze.
Oh yeah, that was him. That was his voice. Like I didn't quite understand that, because all of a sudden it was like Kevin Sullivan's voice. Because let's be realistic, Kevin Sullivan has that really thick, northeastern Boston. I worship Abuddin.
I think King Curtis was supposed to be
darkness.
Like, the best part of my days at Duncan. Is that sad?
So my theory on what it was is it was King Curtis.
You ain't smoking here, Mark. I'm not smoking here, Mark. Come on.
I think King Curtis was supposed to be the demon they were calling to, and that was the demon summoning the Purple Haze for them, or whatever entity he's supposed to be worshiping. That's what King Curtis was.
Did King Curtis actually like show up?
No,
at
I don't
some
think so.
point.
He was. He was
really. He didn't physically.
No, but
he was. So King Curtis was in WCW briefly. He was the
master. He was the guy that would summon all the like sharp.
The Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the older heavyset fat dude who would like sit on the throne in like the weird Dungeon of Doom stuff.
Yeah.
Give the most nonsense, rambly promos.
And
so with the power of darkness, I don't want any mayonnaise on my sub sandwich.
who was a wrestler way back in the day. Like he was
60s, 70s, and better known as Prince Iakea, and I think Rocky Iakea was the other one, because he was I think he was like a Buddha Dean when he wrestled.
A Buddha Dean, yeah.
So now the Purple Haze. Okay.
Brad, can I add one thing real quick? Sorry, I started to digress, but for anyone who follows or knows of Alan 4L on Twitter, I feel like Alan was part of or was associated with.
He's on PWO. He's a long-standing because he's got the little. He was on PW. I think he was on. He might have been on. I don't think he's a TSM guy, but I think he was a DVDR guy.
I think it was a DVDR guy. I think I remember him from those days. But anyway, 4 days ago, I guess, because Kevin Sullivan died recently, but within that time, but he sent out a tweet, which I got a chuckle out of, because this is kind of how it was. Like, he says, like, watching Prince of Darkness stuff, meaning the Kevin Sullivan satanic cult stuff. He's like, it's so good. King Curtis on commentary talking about what a dangerous unit they are, listing off all the reasons Sullivan and Purple Haze are to be feared. Then just going, and we have Asian money backing us. Asian money. And like people like Gordon Soley just have to go crazy. It's like, oh my God. It's like, it's the most
Gordon Soley didn't go crazy for anything.
That's
you know what I mean.
So
look at that.
He's got bizarre stuff. It was bizarre, but it was groundbreaking at the time, because you didn't see this type of stuff.
The thing with that though is, at the time, Japan was really a booming economic power, and there was a lot of fears about Japanese cars putting Americans out of jobs. So a lot of wrestling promotions that's where the anti-Japanese sentiment comes from on a lot of wrestling. Like, people would think oh, it's some World War II leftover, but it's like, no, this is like an economic concern that they're playing on their fans. It's kind of like when we talked about in WCW, when I talked about and said, well, no, the Nintendo had come out and stuff, the stigma of Japanese product had kind of faded, but this is kind of like that big, buy American era. And that's where the difference with I think the Japanese anti-Japanese sentiment came from at the time. But so now Purple Haze is Mark Lewin, who, if you haven't heard of him, he is a one Hall of Famer. He's actually a really big name. He's big in Texas. He's big in Detroit. He was kind of winding down at this point, but it's crazy because I looked it up, and he had been wrestling since 1953. So he is a holdover from the golden era when wrestling was on network TV.
So I want to throw something else out about the gimmick, because this was early 80s stuff, right? I don't remember the dates on it. This is in the era where the whole satanic panic wave came from. The idea of it, and it didn't have any grounding anywhere. It came from this idea that there were these people running a daycare that were doing this sort of stuff, and the kids were heavily coached to give certain answers that didn't happen. But the kids were coached into saying it, and so it was this whole big thing that was eventually dismissed. And then there was this chucklehead Yahoo that made a traveling show out of it, going around talking about his testimony of, I was in the satanic cult and did all this sort of stuff, while claiming he was a Vietnam vet, but he just had a desk job in Japan or something like that. I don't remember exactly. The guy that kicked the whole thing was a joke, but it put the fear of, satanic stuff's out there. D&D is satanic, which a good friend of mine, my favorite line from a friend of mine who brought that up, he says, they say that you can summon demons with D&D books. He goes, I don't know. I guess I've never had to write source books, but that's never been in anything that I had.
That almost makes it sound like they're equating D&D with almost like a Ouija board. But I was about to add, they roped D&D into it, which seems to be because, and they made a movie about this with Tom Hanks, when he was before he was really
Mazes and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters. Because this was a real life story. They heavily dramatized it, obviously, but the real person who was the basis for the Mazes and Monsters movie, D&D, if you read between the lines, he had either really severe mental issues or maybe was autistic or both. But he basically got super into D&D and blurred the lines of reality because of his own mental deficiencies. And then eventually he died because he basically
went in the woods and did something.
Yeah, he went somewhere
I thought he went under in the sewers or something, because that was a big joke and
something like that, and he died of either starvation or dehydration or exposure, something like that. But it's he was, if he look, knowing what we know now, 40 years later with medical science, especially psychiatric medical science, this clearly was a man who had really deep-seated, whatever was the cause, deep-seated mental health issues, and had a psychotic break, and was not in a position where people could get access to him in time, and he died.
Yeah.
But so I want to D&D is satanic, and it caused him to have this. So I remember, this is, sorry to cut you off, I'm so sorry, Chad. I apologize, but I remember this because if you remember, in the mid '80s, they had the D&D cartoon for kids, and I remember I wanted to watch it because I love cartoons. That I'm a little kid. And my mom would no, because it's I've heard D&D is evil, and it's I was 4 or something. So
it was something.
Okay, I don't know.
It got around to a lot of concerned moms at the time, and okay, so I want to point out, this was a gift to me a few years ago. This is 2nd edition AD&D monster manual, basically, right here, right? I found the evil in it. Check it out. That's a halfling. Look at that evil little bastard. Look at that evil little bastard. Look at that. For you, those of you at home, it's an evil-looking halfling with bad shading. That's what it is. Well, there, I got my dumb joke out of the way.
You had psychiatrists were being useful idiots in that era too. It gets pawned off on Christians a lot, which they were a big proponent of, but
psychiatrists
were going right along with that dumb crap too.
Mike Wernke, that was his name. That was the guy that was the big proponent that kicked the whole thing off. This loser named Mike Wernke. So, that's I've been sitting here trying to figure out. It's who's this guy that that screwed up a big cultural section of America for a decade?
Well, you know what's funny though is when you look at now though, there's a lot of parallels with certain things of the Satanic Panic, and it's man, people just don't learn. You'll have people talk about the Satanic Panic and be like, "Oh, it was so terrible." Then they'll do stuff that's exactly the same. It's man, people just never learn. But my
War
favorite
never changes.
My favorite are the chick tracks though.
Those things are horrendous.
I think he still does them, doesn't he?
Okay, check this noise out. I don't know. But there was one day when I got in the mail, there was this, I don't remember, there was no return address on it. And I opened it up and I looked, and it was a chick track in it. Someone had mailed us a chick track, and I'm looking at it going, and I threw it in the trash before I even got back in the house.
I kind of want to collect them. I'm not gonna lie, they are entertaining in their own way. The guy does have
these. I guess if you viewed them as just ironic, intentional parodies, it would be absolutely hilarious. But I guess it's disturbing that he views this he's actually being.
No, yeah, he is.
Ironic,
but I mean,
serious.
It's a shame he wasted on that though, because he does have there is a flair to them. The art's well done. I would even say the narratives are pretty good. If he was if he had put that use to something more constructive, he could have been a really good comic writer or storyteller. Because I said, if you've ever read one, they are entertaining. I'm not gonna lie, you will be entertained.
There is a very stylistic element to it that makes the art stand out different from everything else. But, and this is from an regular church involved human being, they're crap. They're just actually no, I need to use the proper term. They are hokum of the highest order.
Yeah,
hokum, I say. Balderdash. All right, that joke tells part 2.
And then the other one you're gonna see at least in one of the matches. So it's Maha Singh. They just called him Bob Roop in the one match. I don't know why they weren't calling him by his gimmick name. So it's Bob Roop. I don't think we've talked about him on the show before. So Bob Roop is pretty much that guy. It was a guy in like Georgia and Florida. He's pretty much the guy you kept around if someone didn't want to do business, that Bob Roop would rough them up for you, because he was like he was a legit
shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
I'd heard that he was like a legit, like, tough guy.
Yeah. Like, that was his role. And I have to give it to a guy that half shaves his head for the gimmick, brother.
Yeah, he was into it. He had been around a while too, but I think this is probably the thing he's most remembered for.
Yeah, I would say.
Whenever I've heard about Bob Roop, I did hear that he was around a while, but this is what he's most notable for. Like, I always hear it in connection with Kevin Sullivan and the whole like satanic cult.
I think what I'm most known for is there's a Mid-South angle he did. So Ted DiBiase was the North American champion, and Paul Orndorff was getting a title shot in that show. And Paul Orndorff had car trouble, so his buddy Bob Roop takes the title shot in his steed and wins the North American title. And then you find out after the fact that Bob Roop had actually sabotaged Paul Orndorff's car so he could steal the title shot. That's what I remember him most for. So we're going to I think we'll just kind of bunch the Dusty Rhodes stuff up together. So there's a couple of interesting angles here. So there's Dusty promo where Kevin Sullivan comes out and confronts him, and then that leads to a fireball in the face. I think he was talking about a kids' charity before he got fireballed. So I'd asked Shad. I don't know if we've ever talked about it before. So let's go behind the magic here. So Shad, how do you throw a fireball at someone in wrestling?
By being a freaking wizard, man. No, it's done with fire. Yeah, there you go.
You know, the guy that won the 100 won the gold in the 100 men's dash did that like on his victory celebration at the Olympics.
He did the Hadouken?
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, no, that's not true though.
Hadouken.
That's not always that could also be the spirit bomb though. Depending
No, it wouldn't be the spirit bomb. It'd be the Kamehameha.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it can be Dragon Ball or Street Fighter. But I saw him doing that on TV. I'm like, yes,
here.
like this generation.
As an aside, I love how like people on social media, like Twitter or whatever like that, for engagement, will post something stupid where it's like, who would win, Goku or Superman? It's like, Goku, the guy who could basically like destroy fucking planets, like, versus Superman. Like, I think I know.
The guy
who in this context would win?
The guy that just can arbitrarily go like Super Saiyan like 85 and destroy the universe. Yeah.
I have to tell this dumb joke, but there was a Team 4-Star joke that I can't remember what it's for, but it's like, oh man, that didn't work. Time to do that thing that always works, and he tries to. Because I don't think the Spirit Bomb ever worked in Dragon Ball stuff, or at least in Dragon Ball Z. He tries to use the Spirit Bomb, which means that Keith Lee is more powerful than Goku because Keith Lee's Spirit Bomb has actually won bouts for him.
I don't think he ever did the Spirit Bomb a ton. I think that was like early Dragon Ball Z, and then he kind of like got away from that as he got stronger, but I haven't watched that in forever, and I don't think I could.
That's the thing. It never worked. It never actually defeated anybody. So, in any event, back to the thing. Dusty, the way that you fireball that sort of stuff is you use flash paper, because you light it, and then whenever you flick it, it flies through the air, so it burns up faster, and it makes a bigger thing. But by the time it gets to wherever it is, it's already burned through most of it. So, I mean, could it be bad if you did it wrong? Sure. That's the infamous Halloween Havoc Hogan Warrior match where Hogan had flash paper and he couldn't get it to light, and then the whole pack lit and like burned his eyebrows off because he was holding it in front of his face. But that's the same thing.
Well, so, and I think if you did got a little too close, the moisture in your skin, there would be the moisture there. It wouldn't be intense enough that the moisture in your skin wouldn't protect you. Pretty much, you might get a little.
It's not going to be. It's not going to be hot enough that it's going to give you like 2nd-degree burns.
No, you might lose a couple hairs.
Hurt,
yeah, it'd be like it'd probably be like because I've unfortunately had this happen to me before. If you're doing like burning stuff in the backyard or something and it pops and a bunch of ash gets on you, like, or you happen to catch, like, I've done that before and it really hurt. I caught the hairs on my fingers on fire before, and then they burned into your skin. You're like, that hurts real bad. But like, I've gotten it before where I've had like ash land on me that's like still molten hot, like stuff like that, or embers. I've had embers get on me before, like stuff that isn't gonna leave like a mark but it's gonna hurt.
Yeah. So Dusty catches the flash paper to the face in the course of this.
It wasn't a particularly great fireball, I'm gonna be honest.
No, and I think the thing that throws me the most about the throwing of the fire thing, the most prolific person I can think of that used it was Jerry Lawler.
I think Eddie Gilbert used it a lot and the Sheik used it a lot. Because remember,
Sheik used it a lot.
Yeah, the Sheik did it to Andre and beat him by count out in Detroit, and that's like what killed Detroit, because then when Andre couldn't beat him, people lost hope and it slowly killed the territory. But yeah, Sheik used a lot. Andre, I feel like there's someone else I'm missing.
Because I think I remember that Lawler even fireballed Kaufman.
Yeah, he did.
Or something like that. So.
I think that was payback, though, because I think they might have done it to him.
I'm just saying in general, Lawler fireballed people more than you might expect.
That's my favorite Kaufman story, though, is so when they did like the big match and Lawler pile drove him twice in the Mid-South Coliseum, Kaufman's like calling the ambulance. And they're like, we can't afford that. Well, no, the refs, and you have to understand, Matt, the ref's going back between him and Lawler, and he's like, hey, Kaufman wants an ambulance. And Lawler's like, that's like $500. We can't do that. And he goes back and he tells him, and he comes back. He's like, Kaufman says he'll pay for it.
That's part of why I actually really like Andy Kaufman, is the guy was so committed to being a heel, and he did such a good job at it that he has my respect.
I also love when he wanted to shoot fight all the women, and Jerry Jarrett's like, have you seen some of the women that come to these shows? So if you haven't seen it, we should do it at some point. So I
don't recommend that. I don't recommend that.
He did shoot fight
all of them. Big raw bone some bitches will get you.
Well, he did shoot fight all of them. He won them all. The only one that gave him trouble, they came back and did a rematch that was worked.
A worked rematch, but yeah.
Foxy gave him a lot of trouble, and you can find that on YouTube, and she does give him hell pretty much.
Documentary I'm From Hollywood is on YouTube, and it's great. They used to play it on Comedy Central all the time in the late 90s, but it's honestly, it's great.
And okay, so the fireball, I think what happened with the fireball and why it wasn't great is I think the paper caught fire too quick on him, because it's kind of, is you see him throwing it, by the time he's getting ready to throw it, it's already pretty much done.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think that's just a oops happens. So then we'll go into, I think, which was my favorite angle segment. So this is like, it's kind of just a brawl. So it's like Dusty, and then it's Sullivan and Purple Haze, and then rando appearances, Adrian Street gets involved.
Oh yeah,
and then
Adrian Street part of this too.
Miss Linda gets involved and gets a shoulder breaker for trouble.
Oh yeah.
And then so Dusty saves her, and then he gets a golden spike right to the eye, which I thought
golden spike. Yeah. Which the way it was done, I initially thought like, oh, he got it like in the chest, but yeah, he got it in the eye, because like when they eventually brought it to the back, like the eye was bloody.
Which I think he got the idea to do the Road Warriors angle later on that got him fired. I think that's where this came from.
Yeah.
But so Now, Shad did have a problem with this Florida footage because I don't think Shad has seen like a company like this that does like so much studio to like old arena footage. I think because Shad kept saying, I don't like how this goes from studio to ring.
Are we talking about the Dark Army promo stuff?
You just said in general you didn't like how they went from like the studio to like the in-ring.
So the thing that I'm going with on that is the problem with spoopy gimmicks is the transition from your vignette to your in-ring stuff. Because if you have a spoopy gimmick and then you go to the ring and it's just a dude having a match, you kill your whole gimmick. And that's part of the reason that, I think so highly of Bray Wyatt is that he was doing a spoopy gimmick, but it's the bridge from vignette to the rings usually, caveat, star, usually worked fine. So, but to have, they do their ritual and summon purple haze and all this, and then they go in the ring and do this, and now it's just Kevin Sullivan wearing black boots and black trunks,
like face paint.
Sometimes, and it feels like that there's just not. It doesn't carry over well enough. Is my problem. Like we go from here to here, but it feels like there's a break in between.
I feel like
presentation.
I feel like though, at least the ring style they pick to incorporate in the matches we watched is how you would expect someone that is like a devil worshiper would wrestle.
I would have expected I think this is very much colored by specifically Kane. Is if you're doing this gimmick, probably Kane in the ministry angle, but I would expect big, scary, nasty monster moves.
Yeah, but he's not a big, scary monster.
And Sullivan's not.
He's a short man that was a power lifter, so he's kind of like a proto Taz in his build.
Yeah, and he
was always pretty thick.
Well, he was a power lifter, so
yeah,
that's where. But I mean, like, there's a match we get to after this that, like, isn't a great match, but like when it happened, I was like, oh, that's what I wanted this to be. But so then, like, I think we get like a Dusty Kevin Sullivan match, which is pretty short, and this was interesting because you don't get to see a lot of Dusty kind of unfiltered, and this is 84, so he's a little out of his prime, but you can see the what I would say is the charisma of Dusty, and you kind of get like what I say when people talk about working the arm the whole time. You're like, yeah, I've seen Dusty Rhodes do that, but Dusty Rhodes could make reading a phone book entertaining. But I really do like his little punch combo where he then does like his little shake and elbow.
Yeah. I think it just boils down to the fact that Dusty Rhodes is just plain fun to watch. And you see Dusty do stuff that looks fun, and you're like, oh, that's fun to watch. And of course, no one's going to be like, well, in a real fight, you're not going to stand there and like do this and then wind up and elbow somebody. It's like, no, of course not. But it's fun.
It's wrestling. Like, you need that's
you got to have some flair to it. Not, yes. That flair also helps, but you need like 12 pieces of flair, man.
It's just silly. It's kind of, it's kind of, it's like people, who's really griping? Like, you're really gonna gripe because Dusty will be like, before he like throws the elbow or like throws a mist, like, cause he does like the little thing, like that's for entertainment value. Like it's not a real fight guy. So it's like entertainment, but then it's also, that's, I feel it's really griping about that. That's a little disingenuous because you would also see the same Dusty Rhodes be like, I'm going to put on a wife beater and like jeans with my knee pads and my cowboy boots, and I'm gonna have an absolutely bloody plunder, Tony,
Lunda,
brawl
baby.
with someone and just bleed buckets and just beat the shit out of the horseman or whomever. It's like that's the same. So like
the bull rope and the cowbell.
Oh yeah, it's like I'm not gonna complain that this guy will do like, and then like elbow someone. It's like, oh, that's yes. Like in a real fight, am I gonna be like, before I like elbow a guy in the head? No, but
you gonna ball a dude?
Yeah.
No, I did like
I said before, Chad. I said this like in a real fight, like in my real life. I feel like just like giving a big like Stan Hansen Larry to would probably feel like really like satisfying. I mean, you don't want to do it to hurt someone unless they're a bad person, but you know, just would seem like satisfying.
I did like Gordon Soley's commentary. Like I've not seen a lot of people have great chemistry with Gordon, and a lot of times he's alone. But I thought him and Sullivan had a really good rapport with each other.
It was interesting
because there's a point where it's like
Sullivan be like, "There's a darkness in Dusty Rhodes' soul," and Gordon Sullivan be like, "Well, that's your opinion."
What I did like when Gordon was like, "So you just try to be as annoying as possible, right?" And Kevin Sullivan's like, "Yep," and he just laughs.
That particular thing, I'm just not. Okay, the biggest issue I had with the gimmick is that I am viewing that as someone in 2024 looking at something from like 1980 at a time when what he was doing was new and fresh and different, and I'm just like, wow, this is just intensely hokey, and I have the hardest time with it. It's like, you know what? I know that I'm not being fair, because this is not, I'm looking at it from a whole different world.
I think though, it is a little hokey, but I think you could actually make it work today. I think you could update it and make him like a creepy pasta kind of guy. Kind of give him like a voice modulator so he does like that horror YouTuber like deep voice thing for like the promos. Just update some, like not like a Buddha Dean, but you could make some like Slender Man blah 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 thing. I think the gimmick, because I agreed with you at first, and I really started kind of thinking about the ins and outs and how he was doing it. I'm like, like this gimmick could really work today if you just updated some ideas on it. Like I actually think it would go over really well, because like that kind of hokey horror devil crap is actually like really gets a rise out of people, and people really kind of, especially online, like need to touch grass, people really buy heavily into like that crap now.
Yeah, and you said the key word, updated, because I'm watching the old version, and there are some old things that are going to hold up. Psycho is always going to be Psycho. But there are other old movies that you look at that people were horrified at the time, and you look at it now and you're just like, okay.
I will stand my ground that Psycho holds up.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because Anthony Perkins is such a creep in that movie.
But this Kevin Sullivan stuff is not Psycho.
No, but I think visually you don't have to change much. I think some of the terminology and like some of the things he's playing on, but I think like it could groundwork work today, because like I said, like there's a lot of like terminally online people that would fall hook, line, and sinker for. I mean,
let's be honest. That's kind of what the Wyatt Six thing right now is. It's a similar stripe being done a little differently.
I hate it so much.
I don't. You know what? I don't care.
If you have Dexter Loomis involved, like it's an automatic fail.
It's fine. It's whatever. I'm not worried about it.
I hate the Uncle Howdy thing too. I despise the Uncle Howdy thing. That was Bray Wyatt at his like absolute worst. Can we just pretend he didn't come up with that?
I'm just saying.
I think Bray Wyatt was for his age, like, was a remarkable, like, creative mind. But he's someone who needed kind of like an editor.
He needed someone to say no.
It ain't always gonna hit.
Yeah,
like 100%. It ain't always gonna hit.
No, but you need.
But that's okay.
I think a lot of people though, you do need someone to like say no sometimes. Like I just had this conversation with someone about Alan Moore, and that Alan Moore, when he has creative constraints, will give you like some great stuff because creative constraint like protects Alan Moore from his like worst tendencies. But if you get Alan Moore unfiltered, you get stuff like Necronomicon that has like a fishman like totally like raping a woman, because when Alan Moore is left to his own devices, he descends into like teenage edgelord. And I think because and you know, he's a great comic writer, but you know, you got to have a filter sometimes. Like I think that's where George Lucas got in trouble. That's where Robert Jordan got in trouble. Oh, that is where Anne Rice got in a ton of trouble as a writer. Like when you get too much power and people can't say no to you, like you get into some real... Well, Robert Jordan's wife was editing him by that point, I think, but that's how you get what was the bad one, Shad?
Crossroads of Twilight?
Yeah.
See, here's the thing that, and this is the weird thing about it, is at the time when we would wait 2-3 years between books and Crossroads of Twilight comes out, everyone was livid because it was by Jordan's own admission, it was a kind of a failed experiment. But now, if you go back and you're just reading through the whole series and you just plug along, it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
like,
but
the slog doesn't exist because the follow-up is there. And it feels like a slog. It felt like a slog because you'd be like, oh, we're almost... Oh, no, we're not there yet.
But I think that's something an editor that wasn't related to him would have said, like, you know, maybe we should not do this because it could upset your readers. Like, I think that's...
He was the biggest selling speculative fantasy author in the, you know, ever, or not ever, of the time, because, I mean, you know, you're not going to beat Tolkien. He's got a head start on everybody. But, you know, he was the best-selling... He wasn't just like the best-selling fantasy author. His stuff would be on not the fantasy, but the full-on New York Times top 10 list, bestsellers list. And so the idea of, well, you know, just let him do his thing. It's working. Okay, fair enough. But someone trimming the excesses probably wouldn't have hurt.
And another...
But the formula was working, so...
And another great example of needed an editor. Have either of you ever read Interview with a Vampire?
I haven't read it. I've seen
no.
Okay, so if you read the book, she literally has paragraphs that go on for... I think at one point there was a paragraph that went on for 5 pages. Like,
look, to be honest with you, there are some people that are of the idea that Tolkien really needed an editor too.
No.
Because there is world-building stuff that's just dropped in exposition chunks that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, but that's part of... I think that... where I think those people are wrong is... part of what makes Lord of the Rings so great is the detail that goes into it. And the detail... Well, I don't think he meanders on too long, but the detail really fleshes out the world and makes you care about the world. Like, I think that's where... Like, there's a thing about Middle-earth, and I think why it's still popular, why it's sustained and why it's going to sustain is because he really gives you the world. Like, he gives you a feel for the world. Like, you feel like after you've read Lord of the Rings, you feel like you've been in that world more so than a lot of other fantasy work. And I think that's why it stands.
That's become a lot more common, though. If you look at, we'll just say the last 20 years, the biggest selling books, the biggest selling fantasy authors, which is Jordan, Martin, and Sanderson, they all do it too.
Yeah.
And I'm not. Look, I tried. I honest to God tried to read the Lord because I liked The Hobbit. I tried to read the Lord of the Rings books. I got through Fellowship. I got halfway through Two Towers, and I just couldn't. And I started reading Eye of the World, and I got way into that. Like, I'm not a huge Tolkien fan. I respect him because he's the granddaddy of the genre. He's the patriarch. But
much of fantasy from the last few decades.
Yeah,
is essentially derivative.
Well, I mean, like Terry Brooks made a career of like pretty much rewriting Lord of the Rings over and over and over again.
And like I said, I respect him. I just don't like it much.
Yeah, it's. I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy, even the books, but it is, I suppose, a little drier for some people. Yeah, well, and it's not wrong to have different opinions. I feel Tolkien is kind of like, to use a TV tropes. He's like the trope codifier, the trope neighbor of many things. Like that, he is like the grandfather. Like he set kind of the standard. Even like aforementioned Dungeons and Dragons like owes so much to Tolkien. The one thing I will say about Tolkien, like the trilogy, the original like Lord of the Rings trilogy, is that I'm sorry, folks, for all the hardcore Tolkien fans, I do not give a shit about Tom Bombadil.
No.
And you cannot make me give a shit about him. I'm sorry. Like, what the fuck was this shit? I don't want this. I am glad that didn't make it its way into the 28-hour Lord of the Rings extended
even
editions.
Like,
enough.
I don't have a problem with that part of the book, but my thing is, how is that going to work in a movie? It's not going to work in a movie. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
So you said we can disagree heartily, and like I said, I respect the guy, but when I was in college and I said, no, I don't like it, I don't care for it, I had a young woman threaten to stab me with a plastic knife over it in a McDonald's.
Well,
and I was being kind of a little shit at the time too, so she was like, what'd you say about Tolkien? And she's like holding it right there, and I just kind of reached over and like snapped the plastic knife, and I was like, I said I don't like it.
So the thing with Tolkien though in Lord of the Rings is, and I think what probably hurt your enjoyment of it as you were older, like you have to kind of be a teenager, and that has to be kind of your intro into fantasy. Because even if you've played like D&D, because like a lot of people like complain about like, well, this is kind of hackney. I'm like, yes, because that created all like
yes, that's not fair. Like the idea that, and truth be told, that's why I know this about me. I can't give Harry Potter a fair chance. Because from what people have told me, I know full well that I would start shitting on it. Because it's like, oh, he's got the Horcruxes. I'm like, oh, he's a lich with multiple phylacteries. And all that sort of stuff. Because Rowling took all this stuff and put it in and renamed it. That's my understanding of it. And I would shit on it continuously.
It's kind of like, it's kind
of like, unfair.
It's kind of like Narnia when like you meet someone that's an adult that reads Narnia for the first time, and they're like, well, the narrative's really sparse. I'm like, well, yes, because a child is supposed to read it, and the child is supposed to fill in the gaps with their imagination, because
Narnia is young adult books.
You're supposed to read. Someone I think that said it best. You're supposed to read Narnia as a child, and then you're supposed to revisit it as an adult. Is how you're supposed to read Narnia.
I'd read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as late kid, early teenager, but I didn't read the rest of them until later. But I still like them. What were you going to say, Matt?
Shad, have you read any of the Harry Potter books?
No.
So
the first three are good, and then it goes off the rails, in my opinion.
Well, I'm a hater.
So I will disagree, and this is like I'll throw. I guess we'll put caveats in this, because obviously, for her, I don't know how to phrase it. It's like her, I guess, political views. It's become controversial to I guess like J.K. Rowling or have.
Based on the sales of Hogwarts Legacy, like it's a terminally online position. Truthfully,
yeah. The first three books, it's a 7-book series. For the first 3 books,
they're murder mysteries
of Harry Potter. Well, there are more for like kids, like more kind of like kids to preteens.
Yeah.
And books 4 through 7 dramatically take a more mature level to the point where by the 6th and 7th book, it's dark.
Yeah.
It gets darker.
It
actually is like well done in the sense that if you are writing a book series where, again, the first 3 books you're hooking like preteens, then books 4 through 7, it's like you're writing it for the kids as they age into teenagers.
It does have issues because like she's an excellent world builder. Where I think she really struggled with it is well, one, she didn't know how to finish the story. So like they set this great thing up in book 6 and then book 7 just like craps all over it. But she's not necessarily creative in what to put in her world because like she really just writes a murder mystery over and over and over again. But like she it just has some issues. Is it like a series?
It has flaws. Go ahead.
I never said that it was bad. I said I didn't read it because I knew I would be a jerk and not give it a fair shake. Because I know me, and it has
its good points. It's I would say though, like she does have. You have to, if you're going to read it, and this is someone that hasn't read it, you have to go in expecting that she is going to have a lot of flaws as a writer. You're going to be in it for the world building, and she is going to make a lot of decisions that you're not going to like.
Yes.
What were you going to say, Matt?
It has flaws, but she does do a very good job at world building. And I feel that narratively there is progression of many of the characters.
But she has, I think she has bad instinct on where to take the story, though. I think that's kind of one of her problems.
She has flaws. Yeah. I will say that some of the characters, especially like the main character, Harry Potter, like he does actually have progression. And there is some interesting narrative stuff that is done, including like playing with the concepts of sacrifice, because he does at points... And obviously, like, he's the hero of the story. Like, it ultimately winds up resolving favorably for him. But there's interesting concepts which, for like a kid's book, or ostensibly like a kid's book by the end, like that is played with, where there is like real discussion and kind of like exploration of the concepts of sacrifice, because he does kind of resign himself to the fact that it's like to destroy the villain once and for all, I do have to die and sacrifice myself for my friends, the world, etc. But it's interesting because the books do get progressively darker and actually more mature, and I think that there was some...
They suffered for that, in my opinion. To a degree.
See, I would probably have a different perspective where I actually feel like I appreciated it more. I felt that
I feel like there was a point where
of her as a writer, even like a flawed writer, I felt like there was.
I felt like there was a point where she was balancing that well, but as the series progressed, she went too far into the dark part of it. And the other problem I had with it is she spent like the first couple of books being like, well, just because you're in Slytherin doesn't mean you're like a Voldemort worshipping jerk face, and it's like, LOL, just kidding. Like they're all
by the end, like the Slytherins are basically like explicitly almost
like
evil.
All Death Eaters, pretty much. But let's get back to some Kevin Sullivan.
Let me finish Harry Potter. Shad, what you should consider doing, and it's been years since I actually like consistently listened to them, but I would suggest somehow getting a hold of the Harry Potter audiobooks.
They're on Audible now.
They're done by British actor Jim Dale, who does an absolutely phenomenal job. Like they're literally like, to the extent audiobooks will actually do a very amazing job, like actual like quality job. Like he does a great job. He does voices for all the characters. He actually adds like a lot of like gravitas to the storyline. It's worth getting. Like I read the books, but I also listened to them like through audio, and he does a fantastic job. So they actually are well worth listening to. Like you may pick it apart, you may rip them apart, but he does a fantastic job. So
I'm just saying I know me, and I would be a jerk about it. So I just haven't messed with it.
It's fair.
So then we're gonna top off Florida here with. So this is the Road Warriors and Blackjack Mulligan versus pretty much it's Sullivan, Purple Haze, and Bob Roop. So this is supposed to be a match. It is just pretty much a riot. There are ring steps being thrown around. People are getting hit with chairs, and it's not like a good match. But like while I'm watching this, like like if they had tried to have like a straight wrestling match, I would have been disappointed. Like I'm in this for the mayhem because. And I really was like, man, like I really hate that like the WWE just made that like just cut their balls off when the Road Warriors were there. Because they're just like such like take no crap like ass kickers in this.
It's the WWE, WWF at the time is unfortunate because it kind of like. I mean, the word aura has been used kind of too much nowadays, but it kind of like killed their aura where it's like you took almost like Greek gods of mayhem and destruction and you humanize them where it's like, let's have a match where the Road Warriors are selling for like 18 minutes against the Beverly Brothers. Or just, it's like, they should be just kicking the shit out of these like jobbers
like
and squashing them in like 5 minutes max, but...
Just like even their entrance they ruined. Like when you would watch old stuff and like Iron Man hit and then they're just in the like they're suddenly in the ring and they're just beating the living piss out of someone. Like like just the charging the ring just like instantly. Like there was one with like the Midnight Express where it's like 30 seconds in and like Animal has like Bobby eating on the cement and he's just punching him in the face. Like just stuff like that. Like because it's just when Iron Man would hit, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, this is like something's about to like go down."
It's going down. It's going down right now.
It made them huge stars. And I'll give a personal like story. 2015. Wait, let me think. Actually, 2016, I think was it, whatever the WrestleMania was that the first WrestleMania that did at Dallas. That year it was my first WrestleMania. And I went with friends of the show, Damon Gonzalez and Christy Petrillo. And at the WrestleCon convention, which was obviously like, gets attached to WrestleMania, like Road Warrior Animal was there. Because he was doing signings and stuff like that, and I remember like we stayed at the hotel where all the wrestlers were staying at, where at the WrestleCon convention was, and like me and Chris and everything, we rode up the elevator to our floor with Road Warrior Animal, and obviously there's a million wrestling fans there, so we were not the only wrestling fans in the elevator, and people were just like chatting with him, and like just a couple minutes it took to like go up to our floors, but people were chatting with him. And he flat out said, it's like, yeah, like between like Legends contracts and signings and everything like that, is like, yeah, like I like cleared $1 million this past year and like how much money he took. And this was like, what, 20 years probably after his heyday.
Wow.
And that's like mid 90s where it's like, it's not really your heyday. Like 25, 30 years ago was your heyday.
Yeah.
But it's like, and he was still clearing $1 million. And I don't think he was bullshitting me. Where it's like I'm inflating, like I earned like half that. No, it's like I absolutely could believe that this guy between like royalties and Legends contract and signings and autographs
you got to figure
conventions he's doing, I absolutely could believe that this dude was probably clearing like $1 million because they were such big stars back in the day.
Yeah,
and you have to remember too. I mean, and this is a big deal. Hawk and Memphis no-sold the pile driver when they did their Memphis
get away
run.
With that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think like, because I think for some guys, like the Legends contract is a bad deal, but if you're like the Road Warriors, like there is demand to like meet you and like buy your merch and buy a toy of you. Like there is like all sorts of reasons like to spend money on them. And I think this match is a great encapsulation because this match is just a riot. My biggest complaint was it wasn't long. It wasn't long enough.
My complaint was that it was like 5 minutes by the time they actually started like
maybe
it was like but it was short.
Like there's
short.
There's chairs flying. Like they have like the ring steps in the ring, and they're like smashing people into them, and then they're just like going like they just like charge out of the arena like stuff's getting thrown all over the place. Like it was a lot of fun. Like it was a fun little.
It was fun. I liked it. There was like some promo stuff before where the Road Warriors were, like talking about how like they stole like Kevin Sullivan's like Asiatic spike.
Yeah.
Then it led to like the match where it was just Black and Blackjack Mulligan was actually pretty good in this too, where him and the Road Warriors, all three of them were just like beating the shit out of Kevin Sullivan and his crew.
Blackjack
Paul Ellering talking about having stolen the golden spike.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It went from like 5-10 minutes, and then they just like brawled to the back, and that was the end of it. And I was kind of like, wait, that's the end? It's like, but yeah.
Blackjack had a couple 100,000 coming off the printing press he needed to take care of. So then we're going to go to the next match. This is 89. So this one's really weird. So this is WCW. So this is Kevin Sullivan versus Eddie Gilbert. Now what's really weird about this is Tony Schiavone's doing the ring announcing, and they're talking about J.J. Dillon. So both of those guys are pretty much gone around this time. So this is probably like one of the last appearances of Schiavone on WCW TV, or close to it. And then there's a segment around this time on TV where J.J. Dillon sells the Horseman's rights to Hiro Matsuda. So it's a really weird timing thing. But this is kind of like a standard TV match. And I think out of what we watched, this is where you get more of like Kevin Sullivan's like skills as a tactician, where he, he's giving Gilbert hope spots. He's doing the heel thing, and then he loses. And this and then he attacks him afterwards. So this is kind of setting up, I think, a feud, because eventually, I think in a month or two, Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner beat Kevin Sullivan and Steve Williams for the U.S. tag titles.
So the biggest takeaway that I got out of this match is, and we knew this already, Sullivan's basically a brawler. Like, almost the entirety of his offense in this match is throwing punches. But the thing that happens is that Sullivan's timing is excellent. There is a spot where I think they were in like test of strength knuckle lock territory, and they're coming up, and Gilbert, I think he uses his feet to break out of it. And so it's this hope spot. He's coming up.
He has him on the mat. And he's kind of like, he tries to pin him by pushing his arms down, and Gilbert kind of starts working his way back up.
Yeah. And then Gilbert breaks that. And so there's this moment when you think it's, here he comes, and then Sullivan just knocks him flat. So what you had is this great hope spot where Gilbert's coming up to his feet and the crowd's getting behind him. But before he gets enough momentum to... the crowd starts thinking it's the comeback, Sullivan knocks him down. And in doing that right there for me is just this, and it's not just that he does that and Sullivan knocks him down. Sullivan lets him get as far as he should before he cuts him off. And it just shows me this sense of timing that Sullivan understood. I have to let them hope as much as is reasonable before I take that hope back away from them.
He did that. Yeah. He did that later too. He did a similar spot where they start exchanging punches, and Eddie Gilbert gets the better of him and starts laying into him, and then he sends Kevin Sullivan into the corner, and then Eddie charges right into a boot from Sullivan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he was very good at it. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
This was not. Was this like a 5-star classic?
No.
But you have to. I almost feel like this is a match that the more wrestling you've seen, and we have like, between the three of us, we have
seen way too much.
Many years. So it's arrogant to be like we're aficionados, but it's almost kind of like we've seen a lot of wrestling, so you have to have like an appreciation almost for this, but to have that like deeper level of understanding, like you can, exactly as you said, Chad, be like, is this a 5-star match? No. Am I watching a guy who is clearly like a master at figuring out the timing, everything like that. Like, yeah, like it's almost like from a technical perspective, this was fantastic because exactly right. Like he knew how to time exact like the right moment. It's like, I'm gonna give him like he's got enough. Like we're building. Boom! I'm gonna punch him in the face, knock him down.
Yeah.
It's like it had those, and that was most of the match. Most of the match was Sullivan kind of in control, but building up hope spots, and then like the crowd would get all energized, and then boom, I gotta knock him down. But building towards the next one, like it was actually very well done.
I think
and
if
see like the experience level of Kevin Sullivan leading Eddie Gilbert, who was not inexperienced at that point, but
no, he was a vet at this point. But I think like if you said, hey, I have a wrestling student coming in, put a bunch of matches on here you think would be a good thing for them to watch, like I would actually put this on there just for, okay, this is an amazing match, but I want you to watch what they're doing. I want you to digest the structure of this match. Like
I think I would specifically point out what I wanted them to see in it. It's not just what did you see in this. It's like I want you to understand the timing that Sullivan is doing in this. Now watch it. Okay, what did you see about his timing for it? Okay, no. Now watch for this specifically and do it again, and so I can kind of build their understanding on it.
Yeah, from a technical perspective, again, like this was fantastic. Because it goes towards things that, if again, you have to have like I almost feel like you do have to have this like deeper level of appreciation or understanding of wrestling, because it's like there's more going on here. If you're training people, like this would be a great match, because it's like look how they're manipulating the crowd, and maybe you don't appreciate this in a certain. If you were like this is like you're like you started watching wrestling like 2 months ago. You might look at this and be like, oh, whatever, not that excited of a match. But having this background, it's like, no, like this is actually a really good match, because not good in the sense that it's like, oh my, I got to put this on my best of the year list. It's good in the sense that it's like, look what they're doing here. Like they're taking a guy that they're trying to build up as like a baby face against a veteran heel, and he's dominating the match clearly, but he's doing things that elicits a reaction from the crowd. And it's like, that's another level, because it's beyond just like, okay, I know how to like do a move. I know how to like that technical aspect of it. They're into like manipulating the crowd mode, which is the other Chad. I mean, I'm telling you things that you already know as having been a worker, but it's like, it's beyond just like the technical, in the sense that it's like the mechanics of it. Like I know how to put a body slam, I know how to take a bump, etc. It's now the other aspect where it's like I'm trying to draw and elicit a reaction from the crowd, so I'm going to do things that are actively manipulating the crowd. But there's so much to that. That's the thing that I think a lot of people in wrestling, with having never stepped a foot in a ring, I think that's where a lot. That's the hardest aspect, I would imagine, and that's where people, I think, screw up. That it's like maybe mechanically they're good, but they don't have the best ones are the ones who they get that connection with the crowds, or they know what to do. It's like, okay, I mean, even guys, we can go back like previous shows we've done where it's like we can joke about it, and I think maybe he'd get a little excessive with this, but people like Larry Zbyszko had a big match with Bruno Sammartino and then coasted on that for like the next like 30 years or so. But it's like he could literally like go out there and like, I'm gonna like do a lockup with the guy, like beg off, and then I'm gonna like stall outside for 10 minutes, and the crowd, but work the crowd in a way that they're gonna be like out for my blood, like get in the goddamn ring and lock up with the baby face so you can get your face punched in.
You know,
I don't think I would call it different. So there's two things. Number one, I don't think that I would say Zbyszko was coasting on it. I would say that is what made Zbyszko, and so he carried on with what made him. But then number two, what we're talking about is that this match is a superlative example of being able to see in-ring psychology without stuff in the way. Look, there's the in-ring psychology got conflated with doing logical things in the ring. Like if I work the leg, I work the leg and I'm going for the figure 4 for the finish, then I'm going to work the leg the whole time. That's consistency in the storytelling, but that's not ring psychology. Ring psychology is me drawing, like I'm reaching at the camera here for those of you that are just listening. I reach out and I grab you and I'm pulling you into this. And it was, for all of my faults as a worker, and there were many, it was rare that I had a match that I did not get people involved. I did not get people cheering or booing one way or another. And so this, I say that this is a great match to watch for ring psychology because there's not stuff to get in the way of it. It is, if you know what you're looking for, it is very apparent to see it happening. That to see the ring psychology taking place.
You know, it's funny that you bring up Larry Zbyszko. If you're talking about another match, I would actually put on a comp for a student to watch. On the psychology aspect is actually the Bruno and Larry match where Larry loses his mind and turns heel because Bruno's because if you haven't seen that match we talked about, like the idea is Larry challenges Bruno because he wants to prove that he can beat Bruno. And Bruno's kind of like, well, I don't want to do it. And then he agrees. And then the match is literally like Larry trying his best and Bruno will like get the best of him. Then he'll let up because he doesn't want to hurt him. And then Larry just loses his mind because like Bruno, he feels like Bruno is like,
patronizing.
Yeah, patronizing him, and he realizes like Bruno's just that much better, and that like causes the heel turn. But that match is like such great storytelling, and like the payoff to it is so great because like if you watch it, it's like, oh, Larry was being genuine. He just like got mad and like lost his mind.
Yeah. Chad, for the context of that, because we actually did review the Larry Zbyszko Bruno feud on the show. That Larry was Bruno's like protege, like he was trained by Bruno. As an aside, Chad, like what you just said, like that's kind of why people like myself and maybe Brad have issues with like Will Ospreay, because it's like he gets, I think, the mechanics a lot, but some of the psychology is lacking, in my opinion.
It's my issue.
Disagree with me, but
my issue is that Ospreay just quits selling. Like I can't remember which match it was, but the dude spent 10 minutes of this match working Ospreay's leg, and then they do Ospreay's favorite hookup moment where there's something off the top and Ospreay does a front flip and lands on his feet. And he just stands there, and then he does something off the rope. And then he's like, oh, right, I'm supposed to sell my leg. And that just completely takes me out of it. It drives me crazy. But I like Ospreay. His matches just make me crazy.
I've talked about, I like I like the promos and stuff, but I just always know the matches.
He's gotten... In fairness, I feel like he has improved, but there's still issues, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the final match, and this one's really weird. So this is Kevin Sullivan and Cactus Jack playing baby faces against the team of Bad Attitude, which is Bobby Eaton and Steve Kern, which is
Steve Kern.
I think they wrestled like single digit matches when I looked at this on Cage Match. But I was like thinking, like, and I know Bischoff was like signing everyone that had ever like stepped into a WCW ring at the time, but like, man, like why did you sign Steve Kern in 1994?
This match was funny to me because it reminded me like, oh, Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan actually were a tag team briefly, and they won the WCW tag titles.
They did.
Yeah, and secondly, like I forgot that the Bad Attitude tag team existed.
Well, I mean, it
did.
They were. I think they were. They, like I said, I looked them up the team, and I think they teamed like 7 or 8 times total.
I remember them though. I remember them like back. I remember them on WCW like Saturday night, and I told you guys like off, like outside of the show, like in our chat, like I didn't dislike the team. I think that like Steve Curtin and Bobby Eaton actually would have worked as a tag team.
Well, it's
but
funny.
The problem is, like,
it's
1994. It's like this. They would have been great as a tag team. Forget the Midnight Express. Like, it didn't, like, presume they didn't exist. Like, Steve Curtin and Bobby Eaton as a tag team, like, would have been perfectly fine. Like
in 1983.
Like yeah, like in the 80s.
It's funny,
like
they both shared.
It's like, no.
They both share Stan Lane as a tag partner.
Well, that's true.
Because the fabulous ones are Steve Curtin and Stan Lane, and then obviously Lane and
Slater, yeah.
And they probably wrestled each other in Memphis when Eaton was teaming with Coco. It's Sweet Brown Sugar. So I was just like, this is such a weird team, and like, I mean, and I don't think Curran was washed, but he did look out of place. I thought he was kind of like, he looks like a guy that's kind of out of place in 1994.
The thing that really threw me in this one is the fact that watching this match, it is clear just how much Cactus Jack stands out even among these guys. Like, everything going on. And, you know, obviously, love Bobby Eaton, but through all of this, Cactus Jack keeps drawing your eye over to him. Like, he is the in-ring charismatic, like, center of gravity for this, because it's making your attention draw to, or maybe just mine, attention draw to him.
There was a couple points in this where he took a couple bumps. I'm like, come on, Mick, like, you care way too much for, like, what this match is. Like, can you just...
For a worldwide match?
No, this was Saturday night. This is
Saturday night.
Yeah. Oh, okay. My bad.
Go ahead.
No. It's fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's crazy because they actually think about it. This is like a 94 match. And probably like 2 years later, he was gone from WCW. And I think by this point was probably with WWF.
No, I think he was gone. I think he was gone by the end of the year, this year.
Probably because it's like this was when, like, by this point, Hogan had come in.
Because I think I think he was in ECW, like, he wrestling Mikey Whipwreck by the end of the year.
Yeah, he had one of the WCW tag belts when he went there. I think that was the catalyst for him losing it.
Because I think he talks about in his book that he was surprised because he had said that he wasn't going to come back, and then they, like, made this push for him towards the end, and he was surprised that they were actually, like, giving him such a push when he was on his way out.
Yeah. But yeah, he did have a presence. He went on to obviously bigger and better things. Can't say the same for necessarily anyone else, although obviously it's also weird because, like, Kevin Sullivan was basically a face at this point.
Yeah.
But that was short-lived because then obviously, like, 95 was kind of basically dominated by
the Master got his mitts into him.
Yeah, but this was,
I think
really, like, by the end of this year, I think by the end of the year, like, it was him and because it was, I think Starrcade 94 was Kevin Sullivan, I think John Tenta as Avalanche.
No, he was Shark.
Right?
No, he was like Shark.
Yeah, he was wasn't he? No, he was Avalanche before he was Shark.
Yeah, but then it was like Kamala was in there.
But I mean, like, by Starrcade,
the Booty Man is like, Zodiac.
Well, yes, but I mean, by the end of the year, I think it was like Kevin Sullivan, Avalanche, and Ed Leslie, aka many different gimmicks, but formerly Brutus Beefcake. But he was the Butcher. Remember, he was the Butcher?
Yeah.
And that was the Starrcade 94 main event.
I know.
Ed Leslie, aka the Butcher, versus Hulk Hogan. And it's like, this is probably like the worst.
You know what I found interesting about this footage, though, is I didn't realize how much his, like, Army of Darkness stuff, like, he used for the Dungeon of Doom. Like, he kind of took, like, a lot of the trappings of the Army of Darkness, and then he just kind of cartooned it up for Hogan.
And unfortunately, that, if you actually listen to, like, the backstory, like, that was
to make Hogan comfortable to do better.
Well, that
stuff.
was pretty much Hogan's benefit, like Hogan's idea, because he had that. We've talked about that recently, but to even tie it back to like something was said at the very beginning of the show, like Eric Bischoff gets a lot more credit than he should get, and one of the things that he should absolutely dinged on for someone who like crows about how like 83 weeks like I beat Raw or something stupid. It's like you signed that the contract with Hogan, if you actually listen to the details of the contract, it's the dumbest contract I have ever heard. That it's like when you signed this contract in like '94.
No,
you're always gonna fucking fold because the contract itself was so insanely ridiculous. How did you even make money?
It's not the first. It's not the first contract. Money. It's the second contract he signed that was insane.
I thought it was the first one. It was just it's ridiculous contracts.
There's a point where he like panicked and thought they were gonna go to WWF, and then he gave Nash, Hall, and like Hogan like new contracts, and like Nash and Hall had only been there for like a couple months. Like there's some dumb stuff that Bischoff did, but the Hogan contract is absolutely insane, and it's funny. Insane. Loss from the TSM days and PWO days talks about like Bischoff as a booker, and he really makes an interesting comparison that I've come to like agree with, is that Bischoff essentially like his greatest successes as a booker were kind of writing bad WWE fanfic when you look at all the pieces he had, because he was kind of writing WWE fanfic because he brought all those like pieces over and he was using them like in an interesting way, but like that's kind of what it boiled down to.
I feel like that might be perhaps harshly reductivist of it.
Yeah, I mean it is, but I think it does kind of make a point though. I think Bischoff gets too much credit because Sullivan was doing the heavy lifting as the booker.
So fun thing, and I'm putting this out there because I don't know how many people have heard it or are aware of it, but Sullivan was the one that engineered Goldberg's presentation. And the idea behind Goldberg comes out of the room, and the idea was that he's surrounded by cops to keep him from deviating and getting into something else. That was the idea. Now, sometimes that didn't come across very well, but the concept was not to protect Goldberg, because that wouldn't have made any sense. But the idea of, if they had shown at some point they tried to break away and the guys redirected him, okay, cool. But he was the one that masterminded the Goldberg rise.
I like when Jericho made fun of him and he did the spinal tap. The spinal tap, like getting lost in the arena thing, doing the Goldberg entrance. Like, I thought that was hilarious.
Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, it was Lexington, Kentucky?
Yep. Because he's walking around, hello, Lexington! And he throws open the curtains and there's a wall there. Now, there were some friends of mine that were at that Thunder that were pissed. Because they were big Jericho fans, and they're like, we didn't even get to see him. He never showed up. And I was like, dude, it was great on TV.
That's hilarious. But that he got that straight from Spinal Tap.
Oh, yeah. He admits that, but...
I always do the, this goes up to 11.
Well, why don't you just get it relabeled so it goes to 10? Because this one goes to 11. It's kind of makes me think of the Office Space thing. This one goes to 11.
I think it's hilarious that most of those people ended up on The Simpsons too. They did a guest appearance on Simpsons because most of them were like the band, and they're like, well, like I don't think anyone benefited more than us over the fall of communism. And then one was like, well, I guess the people that actually lived in those countries probably did.
Yeah. I remember I knew a decent amount about some of the jokes before watching the movie, but all that did was prime me for some of it. The Stonehenge gag, I'm just watching him do that. I'm just like, oh no, when he's writing the dimensions down on the napkin. And then when it happens, oh I was cracking up.
I like when they did the album and they did it so black you couldn't see anything, so it was just the black album. I think the actual album is just black too.
How much more black could it be? The answer is none.
That's
more black.
We should actually we should do that as a movie review down the road, because that is really
what?
That would
be fun.
That is an all-time I think I have that on Blu-ray, I think.
That's the one that's kind of like the go-to mockumentary example, I think, isn't it?
Best in Show, I think, would be another one that people would go to. But I would say Spinal Tap is like the best at it.
I tried to watch Best in Show on Comedy Central way back, at least 20 years ago at this point, and it just didn't grab me the same way.
Because you know why I think it doesn't is because I don't have as much attachment to dog shows, but especially heavy metal, and I think it's why Metalopolis works so well is the trappings of metal are so easy to poke fun at, and some of it in metalheads can laugh at it because say that's so metal is kind of taking that from Metalopolis, and it's kind of ironically said, but I think that's why Spinal Tap works so well, is because you could just poke fun at heavy metal and it works.
Look, good wrestling humor does the same thing. The frustrating part is when people take stuff seriously, or it's not supposed to be funny. But good wrestling humor is going to kind of poke fun on wrestling tropes, and you can have some fun with it that way.
Like I said, and I brought it up earlier, the mayor fighting fuzzy lumpkins on Powerpuff Girls in a wrestling match, or I need to find it because it's not on YouTube, but the promo Stimpy cuts in Ren and Stimpy after the wrestling one they did, where they just get beat up for 5 minutes, and the guys are like, "Oh, it's time for us to lose," and they just wink at them and they fall over and get pinned.
Matt, what's the name of that one skit show that had we're trying to figure out who's responsible for this hot dog costume skit?
Oh, I Think You Should Leave.
Yes, Tim Robinson, and you sent it to us, but Tim Robinson full on doing a Jumpin' Jeff Farmer skit was hysterical.
But it also was oddly reminiscent of World Class. It's only a 3 or 4 minute clip, but it's fantastic.
It is,
and it's he's giving it's a series of promos he gives against talking about his matches before, and it's yeah, let's say I better give up, or they said it if they wanted to stop beating me, I had to crap my pants. So what'd you do? I crap my pants. Did they stop beating you? No, they didn't stop beating me. It's actually quite good. It's funny.
It becomes a running gag through all the rest of the seriously, that particular skit is just great. Because
which one, the hot dog one or the Jumpin' Jeff?
Well, the hot dog one's good too, but I like the Jeff Farmer one more.
The series is called I Think You Should Leave. It's the comedian is Tim Robinson. I think actually his history is that he was a writer on Saturday Night Live. He's actually quite funny. I actually think the skits on I Think You Should Leave, which is a sketch comedy show, but I think that they're actually quite good. But it depends. Your mileage may vary, because things that I enjoy about comedy, I enjoy a lot more of a kind of absurdist comedy.
Yeah.
Almost to the point of anti-comedy, and it's kind of a little bit in that vein.
It doesn't quite get to the anti-comedy part, but
it doesn't quite. It's a little bit absurdist though.
Yeah.
The problem is the problem is though is wrestling fans have become such humorless fucks about everything that you can't get good satire anymore, because they instantly go there's a lot of other fan bases that can kind of laugh at themselves, and wrestling fans used to be able to do that, but and I blame Cornette cultists a lot for this, but wrestling fans have really lost the ability to laugh at themselves, because it just came up in something and someone did it as a joke and they played it as a soundbite, and I laughed and laughed because it's still hilarious to this day, but the guy being it's still real to me, damn it.
Yeah. Here's my favorite example of good wrestling humor is Orange Cassidy and Sting squaring up, and they go through the whole thing, and then Sting just Like, that's hysterical to me. And I'm sure Cornette lost his shit, but you know what? I'm going to take Sting's word over Cornette's. Because it's Sting.
I'll use another good one because Cornette was involved with this. But when he wrestled Cowabunga, I don't remember. He was a Ninja Turtle, but it was an SMW. Yeah. But it's Brian Hildebrand dressed as a Ninja Turtle, but he hulks up and he drops his shell. Like Jerry Lawler dropping the strap, like when he does his Hulk up. It's hilarious.
Oh my god!
Like stuff like that.
We might be about done, guys.
But like stuff like that. That's like just playing on the tropes like that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, if you're willing to do it, but the Terminally Online Butthurt Brigade is going to find something to dump on no matter what. So
yeah. Okay, well, I think that's it for this week. So I do not know what we're doing next week because the Kevin Sullivan thing kind of came out of nowhere. Well, yeah, and
there's a little surprise.
He's we don't always hit them, but Kevin Sullivan I think is just too. And the Army of Darkness stuff needed to be covered at some point, so we finally hit Florida. But he's really up there. Like in my opinion, he's up there with like Vince and Jerry Jarrett and all of like those, like Bill Watts. Like he is a Mount Rushmore mind for like pro wrestling. Paul Heyman, I guess, would have to throw in there too.
Probably ought to have Dusty in there. Did you say Dusty?
No, but yeah, Dusty would be a good one.
All right.
Gary Hart too. Okay, well that is it for this week. Thank you for watching as always, and we will catch you next time.